you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Love you too. Joe and I have been together for almost 50 years. And still, there are moments when I fall in love with him all over again. Like when I handed him our baby Ashley for the first time and saw the smile that lit up his face. Or on nights after an exhausting day working in the Senate, when he would read one more bedtime story just because the kids asked. When he stops on a rope line because he sees someone grieving who needs.
Do you think Joe Biden is happy about this at all? She's not happy about her husband having to do only one term. I think she believed that Joe Biden could win, but I want to see what she really believe. Let's listen to her carefully. I let you know, and then we're gonna go to 2 days here. This happened on what is it? Day one. This was day one. I just want to go over it a little bit to talk about it a little bit. It's quite interesting.
To know that everything is going to be all right one day. Or to encourage that child with a stutter to find the confidence she needs. Those moments when I'm reminded of all he's accomplished in the name of something bigger than himself. Receiving the Medal of Freedom with humility. Placing his hand on our family Bible to take his oath of office. And weeks ago, when I saw him dig deep into his soul and decide to no longer seek re-election and endorse Kamala Harris.
Wow. Okay, she stated there, but it's. I think it's all acting. It's not real, man. You can feel it in the air. It's all acting.
With faith and conviction, Joe knows that our nation's strength doesn't come from intimidation or cruelty. It comes from the small acts of kindness that heal deep wounds, from service to the communities that make us who we are, from love of a country that shines with promise and renewal.
What if they hear what Ryan's drinking?
Yeah.
Kamala Harris knows that too.
Vodka iced. What is it? Vodka iced.
Our son Beau first worked with Kamala when he was Attorney General of Delaware. He told me at the dinner table one night, "Mom, she's special, someone to keep your eye on." And he was right. Joe and I know Kamala. We have seen her courage, her determination, and her leadership up close. Kamala and Tim, you will win. And you are inspiring a new generation. We are all a part of something bigger than ourselves, and we are stronger than we know. The future of our country is in the hands of those in this room and all of you watching at home. It's going to take all of us and we can't afford to lose. With faith in each other, hope for a brighter future, and love for our country, we will fight and we will win together. Thank you. Thank you.
She still leaves me both breathless and speechless. Everybody knows her. I love her more than she loves me. She walks down the stairs and I still get that going boom, boom, boom.
Okay, so we got Joe Biden. She just talked, and let's see. Let's listen to. Let me see live from TNC. Okay, let's see what.
How they were feeling a month ago. Couldn't be starker. Michelle Obama, because she's the most powerful woman in the country, can just come out and say she had a pit in the bottom of her stomach when Biden was running for re-election.
I feel like Nancy Pelosi might be the most powerful woman in the country.
Second most.
In the world.
Yes.
In the Western world.
Yes. But that's how everybody else has felt. Now, you have this. So we had a little event at a place called Gaslight last night, which I thought was perfect because it's like the theme of this entire convention. Because right now you've got a sit-in going on outside the United Center because they decided they couldn't have a 2-minute vetted speech from a Palestinian speaker. And so you've got all of this kind of joy and celebration of unity, but it's cut with this poison of this rejection of a very simple and modest request, like almost an embarrassingly modest request.
Well, that's probably a good point to talk about some of the speakers we're expecting to hear soon, because we were just chatting before the stream, and apparently you all heard some of that, but we were chatting before the stream about how Ukraine hasn't come up a lot over the course of the week. And tonight, though, if you're looking at some of the speakers, Adam Kinzinger, obviously former Republican, someone who's not speaking at the DNC. If you're somebody who came here, as we were talking about before the show went live, if you're somebody who came here to have your voice heard on Palestine, and Adam Kinzinger is taking the stage,
and the
who else? Leon Panetta?
The uncommitted folks kept saying that look, we're glad that you've got these Republicans who are now supporting Harris, and we're glad Kinzinger gets to speak, and we're glad that you had an Israeli-American relative of a hostage. Like, that's all great. That shows what a big tent we are. Is the tent not big enough for us too?
Right. And I have in front of me the speech that, this state representative from Georgia, who has endorsed Kamala Harris and supports Kamala Harris and opposes Donald Trump, that she wanted to give. And to find it objectionable is frankly insane. I mean, one of the things she says, in this pain, of seeing this onslaught on Gaza, I've also witnessed something profound, a beautiful multi-faith, multi-racial, multi-generational coalition rising from despair within our Democratic Party. For 320 days, we've stood together, demanding to enforce our laws on friend and foe alike, to reach a ceasefire, end the killing of Palestinians, free all the Israeli and Palestinian hostages, and to begin the difficult work of building a path to collective peace and safety. That's why we are here, members of this Democratic Party committed to equal rights and dignity for all. What we do here echoes around the world. And she goes on to make it clear. She says, let's commit to each other, to electing Vice President Harris, defeating Donald Trump, who uses my identity as a Palestinian as a slur. Let's fight for the policies long overdue, et cetera, et cetera. And she finishes by saying that fights for an America that belongs to all of us, black, brown, and white, Jews and Palestinians, all of us, like my grandfather taught me, together. So to find that objectionable, to have every backbencher, front bencher, middle bencher, past fading star that can barely speak, rising star in the party, Republicans, everybody under the sun, time to speak, but you don't have 2 minutes to have this message of inclusion, which is supposedly one of the things that they are trying to represent and project at the DNC. I mean, it makes all of the expressions, oh, this is so joyful and all the partying, etc. It makes it very difficult to swallow when you have that split screen, when you're still seeing in your Twitter feed or whatever social media site you use, when you're still seeing babies with their heads split apart because of the bombs that the Biden-Harris administration continues to send.
Yeah, it's been really interesting watching and talking with the uncommitted people, because there was a lot of cognitive dissonance about just, it's like, well, what are you going to do? And really, I mean, it came through in our interviews that we had the activists here, and more so the people that we spoke who were delegates. Some of them, I think, are privately maybe willing to say that they wouldn't vote for Kamala, but by and large, almost all of them were like, yeah, you know, I very much in the tone with that speech. But even they are found incredulous that they're like, really? Like, they couldn't even give us that. But, I mean, part of the questions that I posed to the activist when she was here at the desk, I was like, well, if they don't give it to you, what are you going to do? And she basically couldn't answer that question. And so it's a failure of leverage. And I think it's interesting because at the same time, my takeaway is that all of this is working very well. Like, the central problem for Democrats is they weren't enthused going into the election. Now they have a tremendous amount of energy, the so-called unity that they want to project. The cable news audience, which is consuming this, is, you know, taking in the roll call, and you know, you see a massive amount of donations that have come in just last night with Tim Walz. Kamala Harris has now raised $500 million in a single month, breaking all kinds of crazy campaign records. So I think the theory in the Democratic Party's head is, yeah, we can do it. Honestly, it's like we can just get away with it. We don't have to even give you anything, risk any media coverage. But more importantly for them, I think, is to piss off any of the donors. You know, Ryan and I were just with Michael Tracy. He was at, what was it, Jewish Democrats event or something with Doug Emhoff. Yeah. And Doug Emhoff was there, and he was, you know, he's like, oh, you know, we're not going to do anything on Israel, etc. Just like, we have Israel's back, and Kamala will protect like Jewish identity, etc. And so you can, you know, you have your big donors. You've got AIPAC now, which is really on your side. They're riding high, and they're one of those where they feel very in control, and the major VIPs and others in the party, which would maybe dissent over even allowing this Palestinian person like on the stage, they're like, well, you know, at the end of the day, most of these uncommitted people we feel are probably just going to vote for us anyway, and I'm not necessarily sure that they're wrong. So, you know,
I mean, it's could be right, but it's also such a risk that's unnecessary, because think of what a minimal, like what a modest, small, like nothing of an ask this is. And, you know, the mainstream network, CNN, or everybody, because they love drama, of course, like they've been talking about, oh, they wouldn't let this representative onto the stage. So
But this is the question I have for Crystal Ball and all those kind. And I know that these are more experts. They've done this over and over every day. Like, you know, they know more than me. I'm afraid that, like, by putting a Palestinian on stage, they might use AIPAC. They might lose people that support Israel. I don't know. Like, is it a possibility that, you know, they look at it like, you know, let's not play too much with the Palestinians. We might need Jewish money. We might need money from Israel, because I don't know about the DNC, the Democratic Party, but I think they still need some money from the Jews. And I don't know. Maybe the Palestinians don't have that much money. I think like at the end of the day, everything is money. That's why Biden had to drop out. Biden dropped out because he said to run out of money. It's not because of just pure decency. It's just money.
So they're undermining their own attempt to have this display of grand unity across the party. And also, you know, part of what has been central to the Kamala Harris campaign, and we see it at the DNC with their emphasis on the creators and really leaning in the number of like TikTokers and Twitter posters that are roaming around with a camera is insane. They're leaning into that because those vibes on TikTok in particular have been very, very favorable to them. And a big part of that is that young people think Kamala Harris might be different. They do not ascribe to her the blame on Gaza that they do to Joe Biden. And so I think one of the cases, which I don't think is, you know, it's not made up, it's backed up by the data, that Uncommitted and others have been pushing is, listen, whatever you think about the morality, if you're just looking out for your own cold-hearted political interests, you have a lot more to gain from putting a Palestinian American on stage at the very least, but more importantly, from stopping the bombing, from stopping to ship the bombs, from really, you know, not just working tirelessly from a ceasefire, but you are the United States of America. This is the American president and vice president we're talking about. Like, end the horror. And there is nothing but benefit to be gained from that. There's one other thing. I've made this point a couple times in the responses that I posted alone while I couldn't be with you guys. But
we watched them. They were good.
This idea that, oh, Kamala, she can't undermine Joe Biden. Bullshit. shit.
She's been doing it left and right.
Nothing could benefit her more than establishing distance from Joe Biden.
Yeah.
He's profoundly unpopular. So show a little bit of courage and create a little bit of distance on an issue where not just the overwhelming majority of Democrats, but the overwhelming majority of Americans agree with that choice.
Well, that's an important point because it's actually representative of a significant chunk of the Democratic Party. It's not like you're asking for a fringe view. No matter how important this fringe view should be held on the stage, it's not. I mean, it's a lot of Democrats most Democrats, completely.
But is it that and I like those point of view. This is why politics is so interesting. I'm just wondering, is it because she's afraid to come too much for Palestinian because she's afraid that she might lose some sort of big money, because the campaign, they have to support you, and the Israel has a lot of money given to campaign donors. Like for example, okay, this is what I mean. You see what happened to Cory Bush, I think what happened is I think she was going against she was too much pro-Palestine and she couldn't get reelected, and then somebody that was more pro-Israel got reelected. Is it possible that matters, or maybe it doesn't? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Completely favorable to this message, and instead they're doing what? Pink. Who else?
Beyonce.
The other celebrities.
Well,
Eva Longoria's
Beyonce.
tonight.
There's a surprise guest. TMZ is saying it's Beyonce.
TMZ.
Right?
Well, okay. So TMZ doesn't say it's Beyonce.
Oh.
They're just like Beyonce will perform at the DNC tonight. That's not on the schedule.
I mean, that's.
Look, I don't know. I mean, it's possible. Some people said it was George W.
You're
Bush.
still holding hope
Some
for,
rumblings of
George
Steph
W.
Curry.
Bush.
I mean, yeah, I am, honestly, because I'm like, maybe then people would remember how much of a heinous person he is and they wouldn't vote for the Democrats. But it's like, given some of the neocon rhetoric that we've heard on the stage as of this morning, it actually would track for George W. Bush to come on today.
And
but
Leon Panetta tonight as
Leon
well.
Panetta is on.
Yes.
I mean, that makes sense. He's a White House chief of staff for Bill Clinton. He's like a Democratic partisan through and through, on top of being a CIA ghoul. But in general, sorry, go ahead.
Just to tease out one thing, Crystal said she does not have 18 to 24-year-olds locked up. Like if you talk to Democratic operatives who have access to the internal polling, and if you look also at the public polling, but the internal polling has bigger sample sizes, so they can really drill down into these subgroups. 18 to 24-year-olds are still a soft spot for Kamala Harris. She needs them to come back to the levels they were at in 2020 if she's going to win.
Yeah.
And they also, and you guys have done a bunch of reporting on this, they also get most of their news from YouTube and podcasts.
Yeah, that's right.
And so while it's true, CNN and MSNBC won't cover this issue a lot, their demographic isn't the one that cares about it anyway. So younger people are going to hear a ton about the fact that they rejected even a vetted speech from a Palestinian speaker. They're going to hear a lot about that. And it's such an own goal because even Democratic supporters of Israel don't object to the idea of a Palestinian speaking.
Right.
The ideas that were in this speech are totally amenable.
Right, and she
to
endorses
the
Kamala in
Yeah,
the speech.
endorses-
That's the craziest
the
part.
types of Democrats who support Israel and who are going to vote for Kamala Harris are fine with that speech. So you have to then ask, how intense is that power behind the scene internally, that cross pressure that pushed them to not?
I think they probably worried that she wouldn't stick to the script.
I was wondering
Maybe.
about
That's
Yeah,
what
you're
I
probably
suspect is probably the concern.
But all of these people have careers in Democratic Party politics.
Right.
She's a Georgia state senator who wants to ride.
Right.
And that there's some racism there too.
True.
That we can trust these Republicans to go up on stage, and they're gonna be fine.
They're going to stay on message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we can't trust this Palestinian American.
No, I think that's a fair point.
Well,
Yesterday,
Ana Navarro.
we
yesterday,
can trust a Contra supporter.
right,
literal
absolutely.
Sandinista.
Absolutely.
Anti-Sandinista.
Yeah.
Well, you can
Sorry,
always
sorry.
trust
Contra
Lil
Sandinista.
John. So, yesterday, Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, spoke, and part of it was Tim Walz. It was his big night, and here's Minnesota's Attorney General to vouch for him. But it's also sort of projected, all right, this is going to be the guy that is Muslim American. He's been sympathetic on Gaza. This is going to be the guy who's going to allay your concerns on Gaza. And he did, frankly, a version of the AOC, trust me, Kamala's great on these issues, and said, Kamala and Tim hear you. I can assure you, they see everybody's humanity. I actually was able to grab a quick interview with him in the hallway and ask him about whether or not there should be a Palestinian American given a speaking slot. And he was very like, I don't know, that's not really that big a deal. Now, he's since come out and tweeted something that was a little stronger, like, I think that would be a good thing. But in the moment, he did not have that positive or overwhelming of a reaction to the questions. Mac, do you have that? Let's go ahead and play that. About his response to the BLM protests.
I think it's important for all of us to realize that Republican campaigning in 2024 is about character assassination. These are not legitimate complaints. They are probing whatever they can to make an attack. That's the truth. I am the chief law officer of the state.
Hey, Griffin.
Tim Walz acting expeditiously, legally, and effectively, and that's just the way it is. Can we just acknowledge we have had civil disturbances in Los Angeles, Detroit, Miami, New Jersey, you name me a state now, and they probably have had some civil uprising in connection with a tragic incident between police and community. He handled this about as well as anybody could, and I was front row seat to the whole thing. I know that. So
one more for you. A majority of Joe Biden voters, of Democratic voters, describe what Israel is doing in Gaza as a genocide. What is your message to those voters who say, this is a moral red line for me. I cannot support a ticket that is continuing to fund, arm, and run cover for a genocide?
Well, look, I understand First Amendment freedom of expression. I understand that you only make change by advocating. But what I'd say is you can't make change by turning your back and walking away. Stay engaged, keep arguing, make your case, and make folks listen to you. Because on the other side, Donald Trump said finish the job, which means just keep killing. On the other side, Donald Trump kicked the diplomatic presence of Palestinians out of the United States. He ended funding to UNRWA, which funds, and so there's no future. He's the one who ended the Iran deal, which would have stopped enrichment. He's the one who's the problem. You can have in politics, you can engage. You have to engage in who you can persuade, and just a matter of fact, read the paper. You have Biden and Harris working day and night to bring forth a ceasefire, return the hostages, and then after that, a durable peace in the region, which will allow Palestinians and Israelis to live in peace. Donald Trump, not that. So I would say that's the story.
Do you think they should allow a Palestinian to speak here? That's been one of the requests of the uncommitted movement.
I'm not going to second guess the podium, but think about this. I called for ceasefire and return the hostages. I did that. Then so did AOC. So did Reverend Warnock, Senator Warnock. You've had that heard from the podium. Would another speaker who's Palestinian be good? I think that our fellow Americans who are Palestinian have a lot to say that is very important. But I'm not going to say that message has not been heard. It has been. Could more be heard? It could help. But it shouldn't be a red line. It shouldn't be a don't do this or else. It should be. So at one time, our country viewed allowing people to use a water fountain on a non-racial basis to be a controversial thing. And at this convention in 1964, black civil rights leaders and white allies demanded
it's actually
cease.
His answer. He's sort of
This is part of the political process. People are demanding change. I say keep on engaging the process, keep on persuading people, and that's my message.
All right, thank you, Attorney General. Yeah, so I was saying it's kind of interesting there because he's trying to balance, right, how his position, Ryan, you could probably weigh on this even more than me, his position and the things that he said and his likely sympathy, his likely sympathy for the uncommitted movement and the opposition and desire genuinely to achieve a ceasefire and all of those things, with the fact that he's Democratic Party loyalist and he's weighing what he can say and how he can say it and not wanting to color outside of the lines with regard to Kamala Harris and what she wants the convention to be like. And so I found it interesting that in the moment he's really struggling to be able to come up with an answer, and then later on he goes to Twitter and says, no, we should have a speaker. And I'm sure that's because of the pressure and the backlash and the attention that this has ultimately garnered.
Yeah, and what he's saying basically is in 1964 they sent a lot of civil rights freedom delegations to the convention, and they were pissed on and rejected and like treated terribly, and a vice president who had become president because of the assassination, who had a history of like abject racism, was nominated and won in 1964. And I guess Ellison's saying, and then look what happened. You got the Civil Rights Act, and you got the Fair Housing Act, and
because Kennedy got shot in the head.
Well, actually,
it's like,
but also what he's saying is they stayed engaged even though they were treated so terribly in 1964 at the convention.
It's not a very flattering comparison for
that isn't
for the Democrats to be making, right?
Pete Ellison, that's incredibly
because he's calling the DNC like the white supremacists.
Well, that's also stupid and wrong because whatever in terms of the timeline.
No, do it. No, say it.
Well, no, I mean the timeline is literally incorrect because civil rights actually passed before that, and that was part of the thing. So when they were engaged at the 64 convention, they actually had a track record of legislation that had already happened. It was the Voting Rights Act that they wanted next. And yeah, there was some controversy over that. Obviously, it led to Strom Thurmond in the South kind of pulling out of there. But I mean, my counter to a lot of the talk here is, and I think everyone has to grapple with this in real time, one of the reasons we're here at the DNC is we expected a lot of chaos. And like, here's the truth. The 30 to 40,000 protesters or the 100,000 protesters, they're not here. Like, there's not a lot of protesters here. I've seen more police than protesters. What about you, Ryan?
Ryan, remember when we were walking yesterday?
Union Park? Like, I have seen way more police officers.
At least 1-to-1,
than protesters. Are there some code pink folks, like, screaming at people in line?
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
Here's from our guy today.
Okay, so, I mean, it's, like, modest.
I'll send this to Mac.
I mean, no more so than I would say any, like, normal kind of I've seen more people at Palestine protests in the streets of Washington, D.C. than I have here at the Democratic National Convention.
There was an expectation that is being like totally underachieved.
Yeah.
And it's that said, there have been close to 100 arrests. So like there have been scuffles, but it's not 1968.
Right, it's not
like,
1968.
They must have listened to your commentary that protest doesn't really work. So
but
they decided not to participate.
I mean, empirically kind of correct. I'm just saying, like, it's like, look at what the uncommitted people, pulled. They made a whole big deal out of it. And they got here and they're like, oh, actually, we're all just great Democrats this entire time. And
but to your point, I mean, listen, uncommitted, I think there's a variety of viewpoints there, but these are by and large Democrats. Yeah. And I think it is a defensible position to look at the Trump position on Israel in particular, which is very much like just finish him off, and to also consider the domestic agenda and say, I am, outraged by what's going on here, but I'm making a moral calculation, and here's where I come down. We've got Maxwell Frost up.
Yeah, you want to go to Maxwell Frost?
Yeah, let's take a look. So this is the youngest member of Congress. Ryan, real quick, you want to set up? He has an interesting backstory on Israel, actually, because he won't
speak for long.
Yeah,
so
let's just dip in.
Let's just catch
dip
up.
in. Okay, go ahead to Maxwell Frost.
We're used to podcasting.
I'm not hearing anything.
Exacerbated by this crisis. And I felt the scorching record heat and know that climate change can sometimes feel like an unstoppable force. But with our movement and with organizing and an administration that cares, we are making progress. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have proven that tackling this crisis creates jobs, that investing in clean energy protects our health, and that investing in mass public transit builds strong communities. And we must always remember that peace is essential to our climate and war destroys our environment. This election is about every drop of water that we consume and every breath we breathe. Fighting the climate crisis is patriotic. And unlike Donald Trump, our patriotism is more than some damn slogan on a hat. It's about actually giving a damn about the people who live in this country. Because when you love somebody, you want them to have clean air. When you love somebody, you want them to have safe drinking water. And when you love somebody, you want them to have a dignified job. And so, America, it's simple. Let's get to work and elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz for our planet, for our future, for our present, and for our people. God bless.
We should say the theme of the night, by the way, is the future.
Yes, that's right. Good.
I haven't felt like the whole theme thing has been very, like, it has not been clear to me the way the themes of the night have
It's
tied
all the
into
same thing.
the.
Yeah.
What's the difference between for the people and for the future? People,
Right.
People want a future.
Yeah.
Future all people.
Good point.
Like,
Not all people, Ryan.
I was
Yeah.
also not all people really care that much about the future anyway.
yeah. So Max Frost, obviously very talented speaker.
Yeah, you
and
can
has
see
a,
why he got a major slot here for
he's
sure.
got probably a long future ahead of him in this party.
Isn't there something to be said though here with this Max Frost and AOC, both like the millennial Gen Z people, basically just becoming?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's a big
Yeah,
story
absolutely.
to me. I'm like, wow,
Did you
like
see-
AOC has just transformed into like, I am a Democrat. I'm capital D. Kamala's the best. Both her and Max Frost. I didn't hear. I'm not sure if he mentioned Israel before that. AOC actually ran cover for Kamala there before. I mean, they're basically like enforcers within the coalition. And then when you
he
even
just
have people like
he
Keith Ellison,
he mentioned war as like bad for climate, basically.
Right.
But yeah, so the wild backstory on his primary, which is in my book, is that he was worried from the drop that DMFI, Democratic Majority for Israel, and AIPAC would come in like heavy against him. There was an AIPAC endorsed candidate running against him in the Democratic primary. They went out, they won the support of Sam Bankman-Fried, crypto people, and cut a deal with DMFI that SBF would give DMFI $250,000 if DMFI would stay out of the race. And then he talked to Richie Torres. They're both young Afro-Latino guys. And Richie Torres spoke, not only got him the crypto support because he's tight with crypto, but he spoke, and he told me this in an interview, he spoke to the pro-Israel crowd, let them know that, look, I talked to Max, because Max Frost used to be a like, not just somebody who had like interesting opinions on it. He was like an activist on Israel-Palestine. Spoke in May 2021 at a Gaza war protest. Like there's videos of him chanting like free Palestine.
It wasn't like an AOC where she hadn't really even thought about the issue.
He had
when
thought about this issue.
was-
He had Palestinians on his campaign. He worked closely with Palestinian Americans in the Orlando area, and he just completely changed his platform. And the guy who had the AIPAC endorsement, he's like calling Washington. He's like, "Yo, where's my super PAC money?
Yeah.
I've done 2 AIPAC trips. 2 AIPAC sponsored trips to Israel. Where's my money?" and it came back to him. We're good with Max. Actually, we're fine.
Wow.
And he's actually been not great for AIPAC on Israel since he got elected. So I think they regret.
He signed on to some early ceasefire letters.
He did,
you
and
know.
that really, they're like, wait a minute.
Hey, that's kind
Yeah.
of sneaky
And then
respectable.
but then they
though.
didn't take him out. Like now, like he's got that seat for life now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
take their money and then do
Yeah.
something different than what
Yeah.
they expect.
One thing I was going to point out is
But he didn't mention it there, like at all. Unless we missed it.
Unless
Tell
we
us if
missed it.
Chat.
talk of climate change has been pretty much absent from this convention up until not just Maxwell Frost, but I was just perusing Twitter, and New Mexico Governor Deb Haaland also spoke to the Biden-Harris record on climate crisis. So I guess that's part of the future dialogue. But is interesting to me that they hadn't said anything about it before, and I think the way that he discussed it, really leaning into the like clean air, clean water. I could tell you from polling that I've seen that's some of like the best, most effective way, even in very red parts of the country, to talk about environmental issues, and then also ending with in a good job is probably the very effective framing there. But very clearly, just putting the substance aside, like this is a talented dude who we're going to be hearing from for a long time.
Yeah, I think my main takeaway, honestly, from the DNC so far, Emily, I'm curious what you think. I'm like, oh, these people want to win. I'm like, all the most unpopular shit that they believe is gone. It's like, they're the party of freedom. Like, if you're here, you're like, we're not banning books. We're not going to. There was an impactful moment where I think it was a gay guy yesterday. He's like, you will rip my wedding ring off my cold, dead hands. Yeah. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, where are you even getting that from? Trump is the first pro-gay president to ever be in the White House. But,
from Project 2025.
Yeah, it's in Project 2025. And I've seen,
you mean the first pro-gay marriage who coming into office?
Yeah, coming into office.
Although he endorsed gay marriage
Obama.
long before Barack Obama. I think Donald Trump endorsed it at some point in the 90s.
Is that true?
Yes.
Well, you never know. Regardless,
New York values.
My point is only that if watching this, it's like social libertarianism, which is very popular in this country. It's very
freedom.
much like keep the doctor out of your keep out of your doctor's office, out of the bedroom. That Tim Walz, like, oh, we're not going to ban books, and it's like, well, what's in the book, Tim? But I guess we're not going to talk about that. It's a good line. I'll give it to him. And I've been amazed. I mean, AOC, do you remember her 2020 speech? In the name of racism and homophobia and colonial, at every goddamn graduate seminar, gone. She's just like, I'm a Democrat. Let's go Kamala.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed at how there's been no DEI stuff.
No.
There's been no kente cloth.
Yes.
There's been no BLM. I'm like, what? These people want to win.
I mean,
that's my main takeaway from this.
And think about this right now. So I'm writing a story on this right now. And so I was going back and looking at how Hillary Clinton handled the first female president possibility back in 2016. They literally brought her out one of the nights on screen to the sound of shattering glass with an illustration of it.
Right.
And now what you just saw on your screens as we were playing video is women wearing the suffragette white. So think about that. Making a statement sartorially, but not a literal statement. Basically, they buried Hillary Clinton talking about that. There we have it right up on the screen. Hillary Clinton talked about it on the first night. Joe Biden did his thing on the first night. Monday was just the let's bury all of our vulnerabilities that we have to get out of the way night. And you've heard so little about it. It hasn't been nothing, but it's been very little. They started with that land acknowledgement, but that was kind of
and that was day one. And that was only 5 p.m. whenever idiots like me were on the floor.
And
so it's like nobody's watching.
And all of the quote unquote woke controversies have been on the outside.
Oh,
so
like the gender neutral, whatever.
Well, that was in there. To be fair, that actually was in the arena itself. But outside of it,
there was a gender neutral prayer room. I'm still trying to figure.
Gender neutral prayer room.
Yeah.
I don't know why they had sex segregated prayer rooms. Yeah. I'm sure we could have a long conversation about that and what it means. But going right along, the woke controversies, quote unquote woke controversies, was a Planned Parenthood van that was doing mifepristone. Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it was all outside. All outside, yeah.
Did you see Hey John Russell was just up there?
Yeah, Griffin just said that. John Russell, friend of the show.
Amazing.
Yeah, we like him.
Yeah.
He can get a spot?
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's riskier than...
that is actually... John, he's a fantastic reporter in actually he's from very close to East Palestine, like right there. And has a Substack. He's been doing work with More Perfect Union. Also, we've had him on Breaking Points, and he's great class focused, very much populist economics.
Do you want to put up the More Perfect Union thing? They just played a More Perfect Union thing at the convention.
Oh, did they for real?
Crazy. I just sent it to.
By the way, that's sort of the equivalent of RNC wise. We were talking about this the other day. The equivalent of them playing More Perfect Union stuff at the DNC, it's like when you get JD Vance stuff on stage at the RNC, when you kind of get the real new energy in the movement.
But I don't really agree with that because, More Perfect Union is very, in terms of the polling, centrist populist economics. And that was one of the things that I was going to bring up is I thought, especially on the first night, they were very successful at leaning into, you were talking about AOC's very academic language. They've adopted more of the way Bernie talks about economic issues in a much more accessible and much more frankly popular class warfare type of way.
Which is JD Vance does that too. Whether or not we believe that he's gonna do what he says he's gonna do, it's this for me. The More Perfect Union thing was sort of when you have Sean O'Brien talking about class warfare on the stage of the RNC. Yeah. It's sort of oh, okay, so we're throwing a bone.
Yeah.
Right. On that, I don't want to quibble. To me, JD Vance is the polar opposite because he talks about these issues in the most bizarre and unpopular ways that you possibly could, right? Like the childless cat ladies. Okay, why don't you just say you support like a child tax credit that's a 70% support issue versus we must punish the childless and the postmenopausal women are only there to rear the children, whatever.
It's because Republican politics is about punishing the left, and Trump is
Right. No, that's right. That's right.
But it's not on stage.
Okay,
She
but I
wasn't
mean,
talking about
like,
the childless
what
cat
is the
ladies
animus
on
of Democratic
stage.
politics? Like to beat Trump? Like they just hate Trump. I mean, it's not like it's not like Democrats are like praying to the gods of the child tax credit. There are definitely some people who believe it, but as long as you couch it, the theme of this whole convention, that's what I was saying with all the woke stuff. I still think they believe it. I just think they're not dumb enough to say a lot of the stuff that they did back in 2020, and they're smart enough to say, "Hey, we got to cut this shit out." You know,
I think
keep it in DOJ. That's a different thing.
I think Tim Walz has been a big part of that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And the choice of Tim Walz was really an indicator in that regard. He really has been the person who has framed the message rather than making Trump into this grandiose figure of, unique evil. It's like basically like he's a little bitch and he's ridiculous and he's pathetic. And I think that's a much better way to approach it. He also has given Kamala Harris, who is a total ideological shapeshifter, has given her some credibility in terms of, she picked a guy who actually cared about passing this agenda. Like she was sort of able to glom onto his agenda and the fact that he passed these things and was committed to using power to project, okay, I'm serious also about these basic economic agenda items. And then he obviously is very skilled in how he speaks about them and very accessible and using the like coach and teacher language, etc. So I honestly think Kamala Harris has a lot of this direction, which has been very successful, has come from the Tim Walz choice, which she deserves a lot of credit, I think, for making and not listening to all the people's, it's, Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, you just got to make the pick. She saw some intangibles there and some direction for the campaign that would be really valuable. One other thing I wanted to run by you guys that I thought was interesting, I'm stealing this from partially from Ezra Klein, who made this point on one of his podcasts recently, but I thought it was interesting how the recent winning presidential campaigns have reflected different social media eras in public life. So like Obama's the early, very sort of like earnest,
Facebook.
Yeah, 2000
social media,
Exactly
Facebook,
right.
Exactly. Then you have Trump is like the more algorithmically driven, like edgier, nastier, meaner. Twitter,
That was OG
Old
Twitter.
Facebook.
That was no
OG
filter.
Old people
was-
Facebook.
That was the good stuff.
When he was talking
Yeah.
about
Hey,
Robert
Ryan?
Pattinson.
Trump was old people Facebook. Like
Yes.
all the old people got onto Facebook by then.
And also fueled by like, the
comments.
8chan and the Pepe the Frog stuff,
Come on,
right?
Crystal, those were the golden days.
Oh yeah, Reddit.
There have
Yeah,
never
Sagar.
been better memes than
I'm
in
sure-
2000.
Heady days for
sure you
Sagar.
think that-
Yeah.
But and then Biden is sort of like an exhaustion with all of that,
Yeah.
and he famously, their whole peep thing was like, oh, we're not online at all. Like we don't pay attention to that. Online is that's not the real world. Twitter's not the real world.
He's the U.S. Postal Service candidate.
That's right. And then remember the whole controversy about the U.S. Postal Service? Oh my God. Okay, let's put that aside. Remember the
Wait, which
DeJoy and he was going to steal it. Remember that?
yes.
And
we got into
still,
the boxes.
trouble over that.
I don't. I don't know.
You and I were both like, "This is fucking stupid," and I recall like
I think there was
left-
some backlash.
Some bread tubers.
yes.
A bread majority report. Oh, did I say that? Sorry.
I don't remember, but it's very possible. But then this election, I think, is sort of a contest between Elon's Twitter and TikTok.
Good point.
And if you look at the vibes at this convention and you look at, the RNC and you contrast, part of why you get a very different energy is because they are reflective of these very different social media ecosystems. And so one of the questions, I'm not saying this is like the controlling question or whatever, but it's an interesting lens to view it through. It is sort of a battle between these two rising social media directions.
Picking up, Ryan and I were just having a conversation maybe an hour ago where I was asking Ryan for his theory of like what killed all this woke shit. Like, how did the Democrats just be like, actually overnight they're like, this is unpopular? Ryan's theory is that they self-deported from Twitter and that because of that it's actually been a net positive for the left and a huge net negative for the right because the net negativity increases because the most deranged shit gets verified on Twitter and algorithmically pushed, which is empirically like pushed a lot of right wingers to adopt even more. It puts more like fringe stuff forward, which shapes the overall direction of the party.
Well, and that's what's algorithmically promoted.
Exactly.
On
So you get those two things together, and you have like right wing kind of politics center around Twitter. Whereas with TikTok and the change that we see here, especially with modern leftism, there has been this general adoption of Kamala, like putting her into the Gen Z, like the Kamala's brat. I'm sure you saw at the convention that the Kamala brat stickers were everywhere. I saw so many women who are wearing them in the creator lounge as well. And I actually think it's a very astute point. The question is like which matches the vibe of the country more. And I actually still don't know the answer to that question. I would not necessarily bet on American cynicism and being fed up. It's not like things are great in the country. I would also not bet against the sigh of relief, the Michelle Obama, like I had a gut, terrible feeling in my stomach. Yeah. Kamala is going to take us out of that. So I could see both of those winning in November.
Well,
she's kind of the change candidate now.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if we go back to 2020, Biden's DNC was kind of similar. A lot of talk about freedom, a lot of patriotism, and it's juxtaposing that with Trump's American carnage. Donald Trump has not won the popular vote. He is, we talked about this yesterday. I think Kamala coming on the scene, a lot of people were worried that she would be an extremely weak candidate given what happened to her in 2019, given where her favorables were right before Biden dropped off the ticket. But Donald Trump is also not like an incredibly powerful candidate. Republicans need him in the blue wall states. They can't run, name a Republican, a rent-a-suit Republican in those blue wall states and put up the numbers that Donald Trump puts up.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think a random generic, I think you stick Glenn Youngkin in there. He's a much more formidable opponent than Donald Trump.
To be fair, though, Glenn is
interesting.
much more moderate on abortion.
Right.
What do you mean? Do you mean? I mean,
I think if you put in a Glenn Youngkin or a Doug Burgett, I think generic Republican beats Trump every day. Nikki Haley,
Michigan.
I'm actually not so sure, to be honest with you. If that was the case for the DeSantis, but the more I saw it, first of all, DeSantis was terrible on the campaign trail. But the more that I kind of looked at it, I'm like, no, I actually think Trump was a lot stronger than DeSantis.
Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You have to, at least from my perspective, you have to offset what happens in those affluent suburban communities with huge rural enthusiasm and support. And one of the things that Trump does is taps into people who don't typically vote Republican in those states. But in 2016, he won because he was able to convince some people in those affluent suburbs too. And then people in the cities didn't turn out in the same numbers that Democrats usually get. So if somebody like Kamala Harris can just do like what Obama did, and I shouldn't say just because that's no easy task, but like can do what Obama did in cities and can make suburban voters feel comfortable with the Democratic candidate in a way that they won't be with Trump, because Trump has never been great in the suburbs. That's why he's trying the Comrade Kamala line. He's doing that specifically because it's something that they think will work really well with suburban voters. So I don't know. I do think I can't think of Republicans that could do as well in those areas than as Donald Trump does. But I will say, if you could have a candidate who boosted numbers in the suburbs, like a less sucky Mitt Romney.
That's Glenn Youngkin, right? That's basically Glenn Youngkin. I mean, listen,
go ahead.
Here's my case. Basically, the people who are hardcore Trump loyalists, they are voting Republican. I don't care whether it's Trump or any. They are radicalized against the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is just as evil to them as Donald Trump is to the Democrats. So you don't need to worry about them. That's why the J.D. Vance pick made no sense whatsoever, because these people are already with you. So if you have someone who's a little less, responsible for the overturning of Roe versus Wade, a little more palatable in just like a normie acceptability way, I think they outperform Donald Trump every day of the week. And you can see he has, as these polls have shifted around and, Biden drops down, Kamala comes up and she's surging, whatever. Trump has basically stayed completely steady in his vote total because he has this, he has a floor to support, but he also has this very hard ceiling. So even as his approval rating post-assassination attempt really jumped up, for him to quite extraordinary numbers, it didn't move the polls an inch because people just have locked in views of this man.
Yeah.
What do you think, Ryan?
Can we watch John Russell?
Yeah, do we have it pulled up?
I've got it.
in the rundown?
Yeah, it's in the rundown, Mac.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
You thought Ryan was over there learning to
man.
code, but he was putting something in the rundown.
Our man, John Russell on the DNC stage.
I know, that's amazing.
Both parties are battling to prove that they stand with workers. But sometimes, workers don't get the invite.
This isn't it. It's the,
Do you know
this
where
is
the auto
video.
workers are?
I haven't seen anybody from the UAW.
Nobody from the UAW?
It's the one at the bottom of the rundown.
After we struggled to
this is
find
good, too.
any auto workers at Trump's rally for auto workers, we hit the road to
this is
find
the more
out what
perfect union
Democrats have
video.
been up to.
The Inflation Reduction Act is helping to fuel a boom in clean energy.
Creating 9 million new clean energy jobs over the next 10 years. Once in a generation investment.
I thought that American manufacturing was supposed to be dead. Here I am looking at one of the biggest auto mega plants being built. We talked to workers in rural Tennessee who joined a union for the first time to build one of the largest battery plants in the country.
We have 20-year-old people thinking about their future. We never did that.
I got things now that I never thought I could have. Generational wealth. I'm working on that.
Medical, dental, vision.
All right, that's fine, but let's get his actual speech.
Well, no, but
That was
actually,
kind of propaganda. But
but it is actually pretty interesting that you have. I thought that was to the context of what we were talking about earlier about how Democrats are sort of throwing a bone to like genuine populist economics and even intentionally, conspicuously adopting and folding in some of the messaging, playing that at the DNC. That is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there was a lot more. I mean, compared to, I went to the 2016 DNC, the Hillary one, and it's night and day when you compare the presence and importance of labor and the way they're talking about these issues truly is night and day, especially as I said on day one. But I think, do you have John Russell's pulled up? Let's take a listen.
But populism that insists we are too different to get along is just divide and conquer by a different name. There's another sort of populism with roots in this party that we in West Virginia know well. They called us rednecks back in the 1920s because striking workers from all different races wore red bandanas around their necks as they fought and died for respect and a living wage. Their fight yesterday is our fight right now. Right now. It is our choice to build on this progress and to create a political home for the mass of working Americans fighting for control over their government, their workplaces, and their planet. And it is our moment to live up to. Let's get after it. Thank you very much.
Wow. Well, that is more exciting to me than the Beyonce performance.
was
Having that there is
I think
amazing.
Beyonce may act. They're playing Beyonce in the hall right now. I can't really tell what's going on. But I can't tell if it's her on the stage or not, or if they're just playing it. But I'm monitoring it if we want to carry that to the audience. But no, John did great. We have very much a lot of the message that we always hear whenever he
shows how much they care about the TikTok world too.
Is he big on TikTok?
Yeah. That's how we found him to start with.
Interesting.
He has a Substack. He's big on TikTok. He does a fantastic job there. And yeah, I mean, that's his view. So you can see why we like him here at Breaking Points. But that story he tells is one that's always really inspired me. Richard Ojeda, you remember him? Ryan, fiery populist West Virginia candidate. He's now he's the most resistance lib presence on Twitter you could possibly imagine.
Really?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's really sad.
You gotta check it out. But anyway, he he is from southern West Virginia, the heart of coal country, and he's the one who really told me that story about and would tell it on the campaign trail about where the term redneck comes from. And it was from this, multi-racial coalition of coal miners who were literally going to war with the mine owners trying to unionize, and I mean in bloody battles that occurred there. So it's cool to hear that that lore and that American history that there was. I don't know if this is still the case, but in West Virginia they didn't teach any of that profoundly important Union history of their own state and of the country. I mean, this is a big issue for me as well. It's really not taught anywhere, but cool to see him featured there. And that's the sort of stuff we've seen flashes of. at this convention that I think has been very effective. And, going back to the question of which vibe, the TikTok vibe or the like Elon Twitter vibe, like which one wins out. At this point, I just keep looking at the favorability ratings of these different candidates, and the fact that you have Kamala and Tim Walz now above water in approval rating, which shouldn't be a big deal, but in modern politics really is, and you've got Trump and Vance below water, I think that tells you something about which message and which energy is resonating at this point in time.
I think it's possible. I'm just weary of overreading the polls. What I'm weary is thinking, look, a lot of people made that case back in 2016. Hillary she was negative, but she had higher approval favorability, I think. Tim Kaine had a decent favorability, didn't end up mattering. I still look at the econ numbers and you see a relative tie, and, everything is still within the margin of error in the battleground states. So I still think there is ingredients where we could be overstating almost the case of Kamala, and given the dynamics of the race and the way that things could change, one of the things I'm still remain honestly shocked by is that the Trump campaign, to me, they're not fighting. I don't get it.
JD's campaigning way more than Trump
I'm
is.
like, what? So Ryan and I are at that event and we're watching the Tim Walz speech, and then JD's up on CNN, and it's like, is JD running for president? No, it's odd.
Trump was at the border today.
Okay, he gave a press conference, sorry, he gave a press statement. He didn't take questions. He gave a press statement.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But he's not out there in the same way. JD is actually at least fielding some questions or trying to respond in the same way. Trump's
is
going to be
doing
on
podcasts.
Social tonight.
Right, he was on with Theo
he was on Theo
Vaughn.
Vaughn.
Yeah,
that's fine.
But not doing the traditional campaign sort of glad handing, kissing babies.
I don't know. To me, he just doesn't seem like he's fighting, and a lot of the stuff reads to me as desperate.
He's fighting literally to stay out of prison, by the way. So that's when people say, why is Donald Trump running for president again?
Right.
Well, because he can keep himself actually out of prison if he wins the presidency.
Again, no matter what, though. I just can't see this man stepping away from the limelight willingly ever. Literally
100%.
ever.
100%.
We do have a clip from the convention of our friend Parker, who we had on earlier this week. He got
what
into
is
a
it?
little bit of a toss-up with Vivek.
Did he?
Oh, for real?
He's going mega viral.
All right,
Sagar Benny is calling him
Did you
unhinged.
put it in the rundown?
Mac, yeah, if you want to pull it up, it's on the. It's
Benny
the
is
second
calling him an
column.
You were watching
unhinged
that. You didn't know
lib.
it was your guy Parker.
No, I had no idea it was Parker.
Yeah, he's our new bulldog.
Cue it up. Let's hear it.
Someone pointed this out to me on Twitter. That's how I found it.
I have a
Thank
soft
you.
spot for Parker.
Yeah, 100%.
I was sorry I didn't get to meet him. All right, let's listen.
Vote for merit and free speech. And you know what? The values this country was founded on. The reality is, vote for whoever you think is going to better do that. So you figure out who that is, and who's going to revive national pride and get us out of World War III. Figure out who you think is going to be the best person to do that. And whoever that is, that's going to be the right vote for the country. That we do not have the right to vote.
Parker.
I'm the founder of Five Minutes of Silence. Okay, good to meet you. We can't vote. You offered to debate us.
Sagar Benny is calling him
Did you put it in
unhinged.
the rundown?
Mac, yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, he was
Theo
on Theo
Vaughn,
Vaughn.
yeah.
That's fine.
But not doing the traditional campaign sort of glad handing, kissing
he's
babies.
I don't know. To me, he just doesn't seem like he's fighting, and a lot of the stuff reads to me as desperate.
He's fighting literally to stay out of prison, by the way. So that's when people say, why is Donald Trump running for president again?
Right.
Well, because he can keep himself actually out of prison if he wins the presidency.
Again, no matter what, though. I just can't see this man stepping away from the limelight willingly ever. Literally
100%.
ever.
100%.
We do have a clip from the convention of our friend Parker, who we had on earlier this week. He got
what
into
is
a
it?
little bit of a toss-up with Vivek.
Did he?
Oh, for real?
He's going mega viral. Sagar Benny is calling him
Did you
unhinged.
put it in the rundown?
Mac, yeah, if you want to pull it up, it's on the. It's
Benny
the
is
second
calling him an
column.
You were
unhinged
watching that. You didn't know
lib.
it was your guy Parker.
No, I had no idea it was Parker.
Yeah, he's our new bulldog.
Cue it up. Let's hear it.
Someone pointed this out to me on Twitter. That's how I found it.
I have a
Thank
soft
you.
spot for Parker.
Yeah, 100%.
I was sorry I didn't get to coffee before I came here. Sort of stuff we've seen flashes of at this convention that I think has been very effective. And like going back to the question of vibe, the TikTok vibe, or the like Elon Twitter vibe. At this point, I'm just looking at the favorability ratings of these different candidates, and the fact that and Tim Walz now above water in approval rating, which shouldn't be a big deal, but in modern politics really is. And you've got Trump and Vance below water. I think that tells you something about which message and which energy is resonating at this point. I think it's possible. I'm just weird. Case back in 2016, she was negative. She had higher never really 10K that. I still look at the numbers and you see a relative high, everything is still within the state. So I still think there is a case where being overstating was the case of Kamala, and given the dynamics of the race, change. I'm still being honestly shocked by is that the Trump campaign, to me, they're fighting. JD's campaign way more. That's right. I'm like, so right. Watching the Tim Walz speech, and then JD's up on CNN. It's like, is JD running? It's odd. Like, Trump was at the he gave a press conference, gave a press statement, he did questions, he gave a press release. Yeah, no, I agree. He's not like out there the same way. JD actually at least fielding some questions or trying to respond the same way. Trump was gonna do it tonight. Right, he was not doing the traditional campaign. Handing, kissing baby. He just doesn't seem like he's fighting a lot of the stuff, even though to me is desperate. He's fighting so like that's say why he can keep himself like actually if he wins the I mean I just can't see him stepping like willingly ever. He's going mega viral. Sagar Betty is calling him Hitch. Betty is calling him Hitch. I had no idea. You would have. Someone pointed this out to me. That's how I found a soft spot. I was sorry.
Vote for merit and free speech. And you know what? The values this country is founded on. The reality is, vote for whoever you think is going to better do that. So you figure out who that is, and who's going to revive national pride and keep us out of World War III. Figure out who you think is going to be the best person to do that, and whoever that is, that's going to be the right vote for the country.
President on the show and stuff. He was also the celeb host on day 2. Yeah. I was wondering why they picked this guy. Now it makes sense because I was like, he's not an A-list celebrity.
Video, guys. We're all gonna take it together. We're gonna post it to social
He's
media.
He's an A-list celebrity to like Stephanie Rule viewers.
When we fight, you're gonna say. Are you ready? Okay, let's record. We're recording. You ready, Tony?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, ready? When we fight.
Oh.
When we fight.
Yeah, let's get some F's in the chat for this one.
Are you ready for Kamala Harris to win?
He just did.
Good,
yeah.
because when Kamala wins, America wins.
Oh, okay.
We did it! We did it, Joe. Thank you, Tony.
Haven't heard
No,
that
you
in a
gotta
second.
go.
Bye, everybody.
Tony Goldwyn, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so listen. It's come to my attention that there
got a lot
are
of
some
Fs in the
folks
chat.
who struggle or pretend to struggle with the proper pronunciation of our future president's name.
Like the current
So,
president.
Hear me out. Confusion is understandable. Disrespect is not.
Ooh, this is.
So tonight, we are going to help everyone get it right. Here to help me are some very special guests.
Are those your kids?
Thank you, ladies. Can you tell us your names?
Hello, everybody. My name's Amara. And my name is Leela, her little sister.
And what are you here to do?
To teach you how to say your auntie's name.
Okay. So, how do you pronounce it?
That's cute.
First, you say comma like a comma in a sentence. Then you say la like la 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 la.
Put it together, and it's 1, 2, 3. Kamala. All right, so let's practice.
Kamala.
Let's practice.
Everybody over here, say comma. Everybody over here, say la.
Together.
Do it, Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan, what are you doing, dude?
For president.
All right, you get kids involved. You win me over. That was adorable.
Yeah, but I will say before the kids, that was like the actual most tone deaf
that was
cringe,
painful.
and
Yeah.
there hasn't been a ton of that so far. There have been moments like that, but anytime you're just like rubbing shrill celebrities in the faces of like normal people, oh,
kids rescued it. So
yep,
all
they
is
needed
forgiven.
it.
Yeah.
The Olivia Pope thing nearly Pope. Oh my God, that was.
that was like a girl. That was like a hashtag girl boss 2016 moment. That was That
So
was
let's
rough.
see where we are in the schedule. I'm actually curious. So,
Yeah.
Kerry Washington, that just happened. Next up is
So guys, I'm gonna go to this debate that Charlie Kirk had with the young turd. That was a great debate. I want to go over that.
It's probably a 50-50 race. Slight advantage Kamala. Like slight advantage probably because she has a lot of momentum, some vibes behind it. I think the momentum's slowing. But yeah, I mean, look, you have to live in reality. And we had a great convention. And it's, we've had a couple weeks where they switched out a candidate and it's never happened before. And we're going to see like how real it is in the coming weeks. I think the race really starts on Labor Day. So it really kind of sets in. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see a race that's very tight to the end.
It seems like the Trump camp was kind of caught flat-footed by it. Like, I really did assume that the campaign is like a lot more strategic this time around compared to like 2016. 2016, it was just kind of like chaotic, but it worked. This time around, I'm actually a little surprised that you have this strategic campaign. The RNC went really well for Trump. I thought they were kind of preparing for the possibility of Biden dropping out and Kamala being the presumptive nominee. And it seems like he was kind of caught flat-footed. What are your thoughts on that?
There was some preparation. They should have listened to you guys. You guys were the most confident. When I came on the show, you're like, no chance Biden stays. And because you're actually in touch with the Democrat base, like I watch it on TV, so I'm not in touch with it at all. And you guys are like, no way he stays. And I was like, really? This late in the game? You're like, not going to happen. No way. And you were, of course, right. I mean, it's hard to prepare for something that's never happened before. And I will give the RNC credit. There was a fair amount of Kamala mentions, in the original written speech. Joe Biden wasn't even in the written speech for Donald Trump. But I think what caught us by surprise, and I would love your reaction to this, is she was generally appeared as an unlikable candidate. Would you agree with that, Anna? Like, as far as the media depiction, right? And now she's the most likable person, like Obama 3.0. That's what kind of caught us flat-footed. Not even the person, but all of a sudden, and I attribute it to a lot of pent-up Democrat base enthusiasm that was.
That's a very good point, what Charlie Kirk is saying here. That's a very, very good point. Kamala was not, on any circumstances, likable before. So something happened, now everybody like her. And so they got caught, what is it, they caught flat-footed, that's the way they say it, but so they were shocked by this. But I understand what's her name, what Anna is saying. You should have been prepared, dude. You got to be prepared for those things because obviously it looked like Joe Biden was not being able to make a case for himself. He was losing all the time. Like it was pretty smart. Whoever did this was very smart to have the first debate very early. I heard that this was the earliest that the first debate ever happened. So it was very good for us to have that so that they can have the time to think about like, okay, what should we do? Should we get rid of him? I think it was a very good idea for them to do that. They're a very good idea.
Was not allowed to be kind of let out of the volcano the last year and a half, and then all of a sudden there was somebody that wasn't named Joe Biden, and she had a couple weeks to ride that wave. I don't know if I'm analyzing that correctly, but
yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. But go ahead.
Just want to say, I mean, that did surprise me because it did seem like a switch overnight in terms of the way voters felt about Kamala and the way the media felt about Kamala, right? Like it seemed to be more critical when she wasn't the presumptive Democratic nominee. But I really think the psychology behind it is here you have an 81-year-old man who is definitely going to lose to Donald Trump, can barely put a sentence together. Every time we would watch him speak, I mean, my shoulders would tense up because you know it's going to be pretty bad. And I think the relief is what led to the excitement.
I think that's exactly right. And so I was curious, do you think it's then Kamala as a placeholder for Biden relief, and is that sustainable?
Yeah, no, there's something different. So, look, first I'll agree with both of you guys tonight, but I think the larger point is the third point that I'm going to make. So, was there a moment of like relief and ecstatic like reaction because hey, oh my God, we might win? We were going to lose.
So used to the headlines for 6 months,
right? It was so depressing, and Biden was such a terrible candidate, and even the ones defending him knew he couldn't speak, right? So they knew it inside. They just wanted to. They were in their loyalist camp. So part of that is definitely right. And then the media had a reaction because let's keep it real. They want to support corporate politicians, and lately they've been in love with corporate Democrats. So, but they got mad at Biden because they thought that he lied to them, but more importantly, that he made them lie for him, right? They're like, oh, he's not too old, he's not too old. And then it was revealed that he was too old. And so the media was like bitter at Biden, but when Kamala Harris is around, they're like, all right, a corporate Democrat we like, okay?
She can speak.
Yeah, she can speak. But that goes to the third and most important point. Before, I was a little bit worried about Kamala. I wanted an open convention, not because I didn't think she would be the best candidate, but I was not positive. I certainly wasn't sure, right? And I wanted an open competition. And that's because she was doing a lot of word salads, okay, in the interviews. And so anybody can see that, it's clear as day, right? But now she's not doing it anymore. And so my best guess is that she had anxiety issues, and that's why she was doing that. And right now, her speeches are lucid, clear, good. She
hasn't done interviews lately, or do you think?
Yeah, no, she should definitely do interviews. The reason she wasn't doing interviews is because they were getting her economic plans ready. And so once she has them, she could go out and defend them. Before, she didn't want to do the interviews without having all of her proposals ready. But the fact is she's been good on the campaign trail, and she made a Tim Walz pick, which we all like. We like her economic populist positions. So it's not just like, hey, the media likes her, and hey, at least she's not Biden. She's done positive things that have galvanized all of the Democratic voters.
So no, that's helpful to know. And I'm literally here to learn because I'm not in touch with the Democrat base. But do you stick to your position that she should have won it through an open convention?
I mean, for me personally, I'm not going to speak for Cenk. I just think that if you are going to run a campaign on the importance of saving democracy, then you should engage in the democratic process. And I do have a problem of feeling as though she was kind of like foisted on the Democratic voters, but the Democratic voters seem to really love her.
Yeah, so I guess my question is when Joe Biden won the primary votes, was she also on the ticket when they voted for the primary candidate?
No.
So that would have made the argument stronger, right? Because they would have said that I think it was just Joe Biden, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, an open convention probably would have been a little bit of a mess.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's the reason why
the process would have just, I mean, right now it would have been the most entertaining television ever, but.
Yeah, so listen, the open convention would have definitely been the right way to go. And for one of the main reasons is what you just said, which is that everybody on the planet would have been watching, right?
I think it actually would have helped.
It would have definitely helped. It would have helped, and it would have featured a lot more Democratic candidates, and it would have gotten them a lot more hype. It would have gotten a lot more viewers, a lot more free media, earned media, right? So it was the right way to go. But to be fair to Kamala Harris, so the main reason I want an open convention is I wanted a candidate to be able to prove that they can get the most amount of delegates. And she did that within 24 to 48 hours. So she did actually go and campaign. She had a huge advantage. She's the vice president. Biden endorsed her. But if you remember, Pelosi, Schumer, and Obama did not endorse her.
Yeah, do you think that was legit, or was that a little bit of a thief?
No, that was legit.
It was? They were waiting to see how it played out?
Yeah, they were. And so since it was legit and she won the delegates without Obama's endorsement or Pelosi's endorsement, I said, well, I mean, that's what I wanted. I wanted her to win the delegates, and she won the delegates. Is it a perfect system? Not even within a million miles. Would we have been better with an open convention? Yes. But after she won the delegates, what would we do at the convention? She already won them. So it kind of ended the conversation.
So I want to go back to Trump because you said that you're not in touch with the Democratic base. I kind of feel the same way about the Republican base, right? Okay, so this is what I want to understand because, you watch the media and sometimes I wonder, am I just buying what they're selling? Is this reality? And what they're selling is that Trump is flailing. Trump is really struggling in campaigning against Kamala Harris, and he's really not helping himself by saying things that turn a lot of voters off. Right? Remember, the election comes down to the independent voters, the swing voters. Those are the people who end up being the kingmakers, the deciders of the election. And he can't stop himself from attacking her on her looks, calling her stupid, like things that turn a lot of independent voters off, right? But how does the Republican base feel about it? Like, are they eating it up? Do they love it? Or do they want him to go back to a more economic populist message?
They're definitely resolutely behind him. There is a different way to look at it, though. The question is, will independents decide the election? Because you can also run up the score with your base, which Democrats have proven you could do that in certain elections. And I think you guys would agree, if you have a strong base and you're, for example, getting 60% turnout in a strong county, get 75% turnout, it's actually sometimes easier. But that doesn't, you're right. You do have at least 10 to 15% in the swing states of tilt swing independent voters. I think that the media is misrepresenting. I think Trump's had a fine couple weeks. It hasn't been the best for the campaign, largely because the headwinds have been so dramatic. I think he's at his best when he is making the argument that I am against the establishment that has robbed you. Whether you guys agree with it or not, I know you don't. But I'm saying he's at his best when he makes this argument that the establishment has been robbing you, that this power regime has been lying to you, and I am an insurgent against those things. That is a very popular message. I agree. Yeah, my advice to him is be the renegade you were in 2016, because fair or unfair, I think it's fair to present this argument that the power centers have consolidated against your campaign in record ways. And he has a sentencing hearing in September, which will definitely play into his argument that they don't want me to be president, so they're willing to use unusual ways to try to prevent me from being president. And so, yeah, look, as far as the month of August, I think from his perspective, he's like, I beat one candidate, now I have to beat another. He had the debate with Joe Biden. He saw this thing happening. And he realizes right now that he's going to have, in a compressed time frame, a very, very competitive race, where against Joe Biden, I don't think it would have been very competitive at this time. This convention would have been not good.
Hey, don't scroll away. Come back. Because before the video continues, we just want to urge you to like a group that says, I actually don't love Trump, but I love that he's fighting the establishment, and I hate the establishment so much, I'm going to vote for Trump, right? But he hurts his cause massively when he's constantly pleasuring donors on stage at rallies. When he says like, oh yeah, I was against electric vehicles, but now Elon Musk is strongly endorsing me, meaning giving me $90 million, right? Yeah, and it might be more than that. So now I love electric vehicles.
I will give Trump some credit. If you listen to his Twitter space, he was they had a back and forth. They were talking more at each other than with each other. But he still says he doesn't believe in the electric vehicle mandate, to be fair, right? He doesn't believe in the subsidies for electric vehicles. So, I mean, I'm sure there's other examples you could list, but look, politics is never going to be pure as much as we'd like it to be. But I think that President Trump has done a very good job of having this economic populist message. And the other message that needs to be talked about, which I think is the Achilles heel of the Democrat Party, where Bernie Sanders used to actually have a great position on, is immigration. And the vast majority of this country thinks that we have too many people coming into the country too quickly in an unvetted way. And the economic populism one, Kamala Harris, I said this on my show, she has put the Republicans on defense. I think her policies are insane, to be honest. We could debate that, but it might be not a good use of our time. I think her policies are insane, but they're very popular. They're very popular to say, I'm going to make it easier for you to buy a home. I'm going to, make grocery prices more affordable. I think price controls are a bad idea. But immigration is a very difficult issue for the Democrats. It's very difficult for them to navigate because the body politic thinks that we have too many people coming into this country, and I think President Trump needs to lean into that.
So, sorry, just real last thing on the donors. I hear you on immigration.
No, examples. I'm happy to.
Yeah. But so, you got Elon Musk, you got the oil companies where he just keeps saying, hey, look, they're giving me money and we should drill, baby, drill, and all this stuff. He just can't help himself from being obvious. But the number one, like the one that I'm curious as to your take, Miriam Adelson. So when he's saying, hey, I gave her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, first of all, she's a donor. Why'd you give her the Presidential Medal of Freedom? That's terrible, right? And that's better than the Medal of Honor. That's a disaster, right? So what do you make of that? Like, are you bothered that he's saying those things?
No, I'm not. I mean, he's pro-Israel. He's pro-Israel, and he's not going to share your views on that. But yeah, I mean, he was pro-Israel throughout his presidency. What you're getting at is he pro-Israel because of donor money? I don't believe that.
And do you think you should have given the Medal of Freedom to Miriam Adelson?
I don't have a strong opinion on that. I think he gave it to her also because of her philanthropy. I could be wrong. I mean,
philanthropy towards Trump.
I mean, she did give billions of dollars to like children's hospitals, stuff like that. I mean, while we're at it, I mean, actors and actresses get the Presidential Medal of Freedom, right? Like Tom Hanks got the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Like legendary ones. And I guess if legendary donors now are getting
give a couple $1 billion to like children's hospitals and stuff, like a couple billion. I mean, we go through the list of people who get the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Sometimes it's not exactly the criteria that you're making it out to.
Right, but the last part of that, first of all, I disagree with all that. I think she got it 100% because she's a donor, but that's okay. But, I mean, you guys stake your so much ground on we love veterans, etc. And then when he makes it seem like the Medal of Honor is no big deal, it's a disaster for you, isn't it?
I'm happy to go through it. I actually don't know exactly what he said. So, yeah, I'm happy to respond to it. So
I want to pivot to VP picks because, it does appear that J.D. Vance was a bit of a risky pick for Donald Trump. And I get why he chose J.D. Vance. I get the strategy behind it, trying to the Rust Belt voters. And also, Trump was more confident, thinking that he's running against Joe Biden. Do you think now, in retrospect, Trump made a bad decision?
I think it was a great decision. I think that he was maybe expecting a little bit of a honeymoon as a VP, and he received a hurricane. He unearthed some, clips from my show and others about the childless cat stuff, which we could talk about, but I think there's more interesting stuff to discuss. But yeah, I mean, the last couple of weeks, I think he's been on point. He went on the Sunday News Show, to his great credit. And Cenk, you pressed me on the donor thing. I'll press you on one thing. You say that Kamala didn't do a sit-down interview because she didn't get her economic plan. I mean, she is the sitting VP. She could take some questions, right?
No, I totally agree.
I mean, you got it.
She should have been doing the interviews, even if she didn't have all that stuff ready to go.
You got to talk to the press if you're the candidate, right? Even if you don't have your plans together. But to JD's credit, he sat down with 3 Sunday shows on one day, and I thought he handled it masterfully. I thought he handled it beautifully. I could tell you what I'm hearing from Republicans that don't love Trump, because there are Republicans out there that don't love Trump. J.D. Vance is a very sophisticated, smart, and appealing candidate to many of them that are making it more even comfortable to vote for Trump right now. And yeah, look, we're going to see what ends up happening. We've had a lot of coverage around vote both VPs. I think Walz was an awful choice. I think Shapiro would have been far better. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Just looking at it from a Pennsylvania standpoint, we were like, please don't pick Shapiro. Please don't pick Shapiro. And anyway, and I'm sure you guys feel the same about Vance, right? You were like, please pick somebody else or pick Rubio or whatever.
I thought
but
Vance was an interesting choice.
It's a regional pick where definitely in the Rust Belt. Let me also say this. You guys have written books before and published books, I'm sure. J.D. Vance has sold over 1 million copies of his book since the VP. Now, that's not about enrichment. That's 1 million voters that are coming in contact with your story. the Netflix special has been top 5 since it's been announced. That is a way to communicate with voters in an asymmetrical, non-traditional way. What we find, though, is that VP picks can hurt you more than they can help you. Sarah Palin, right? So as time goes on, I'm confident that J.D. Vance can now succeed in the one remaining spotlight, which is the VP debate against Walz. I think he's going to be able to hold his own, for sure.
Look, much has been made about his pretty offensive comments about couples or women who don't have children. But the media hasn't dug into Vance declaring himself a post-liberal conservative yet. And I think that's going to be a problem for him. Because, he is rebuffing the notion of a liberal democracy.
Well, or is he rebuffing neoliberalism?
I don't.
Those are two different things.
Neoliberalism is
You guys
something
don't like
entirely
neoliberalism.
different. No, I don't like it.
So maybe that's what he's rebuffing.
No, but post-liberal conservative is not about
I think
neoliberalism.
you're putting words in his mouth, but he at least
he hangs out with the what's the name?
Chris Yarvin. He's had him on my show, and I've debated with him on my show because he wants something that I don't want. But neoliberalism, as you all know, is unfettered free trade, adventurous foreign wars, and a very, very aggressive international policy, and also mass immigration. J.D. Vance definitely disagrees with all 3 of those things. Your question is what? As people dive into that,
I just want to know if you believe that he is in line with the Curtis Yarvins who do not believe in our liberal democracy.
First of all, no, I don't. I talk to Curtis Yarvin and I disagree with him. You could talk to people all the time. J.D. Vance's record is very clear, and I don't want to get too down in this rabbit hole, but to understand what he said about the childless cat women was that he was saying that when you have children, that your society is better governed when your leaders are having children, when they're not having children. I think you guys could agree with that, right?
No. I don't think that's true at all.
Can I just ask the hypothetical?
Hold on.
You had
Let me
50 childless people and 50 people with families. Which group of people would make better decisions for the country the next 100 years?
I think that it is totally wrong to assume that
you don't think that having children makes any bearing on your politics?
No, I don't.
I think
you don't think it does something to you, where you think about the next generation? And
I think about the next generation all the time, and I don't have children.
Okay, that's fine.
I think about educating our kids. I'm worried about the fact that so many children in America are illiterate and cannot read. I think about the future of this country all day, every day, right? I don't think having children is the end-all be-all of whether or not you care about the future of this country. I love this country.
I want you to be able to have kids. I don't want to make this about you, Anna, because I have a lot of respect for you. But I could tell you, as someone who has had kids and has not had kids, it does profoundly, deeply change. Yeah. And it changes your politics. It changes everything. And that's what J.D. Vance was saying, is that when a society starts having children, it starts to throw off the wiring of the multi-generational framing of how public policy decisions can be made. We're not going to agree on that, but I think it's rather common sense that when a society ceases to have children, the society ceases to exist.
Okay, so I'm going to answer that, and I want to ask you about Tim Walz in a second. But I want to let our linear audience know, if you're watching on Samsung, Roku, all those places, we're going to continue. We're going to have speeches. We're going to have more interviews. TYT.com. So now the show is embedded on the homepage of TYT.com, so you can keep watching there all day, every day. Okay, so now, Charlie.
Yes.
So number one, look, everybody has a different experience. So I have kids, and I have the same exact way of thinking about things before the kids and after the kids.
So that's so interesting. Having kids didn't change your politics at all?
Not 1%.
Or your worldview?
Not 1%. No.
I can vouch for that.
Having kids didn't change you?
No. I love my kids more than you could possibly imagine.
So you didn't learn something about humanity or how to pass values down or?
Yeah, no, I've been thinking about that all along.
That's incredible. I'm not doubting it, but your why didn't change? Why you fight so hard?
Yeah, no, it didn't at all. Yeah, because I kind of view, this is really corny, but I view the audience and the voters and the average American as family.
Yeah.
And so I was already looking out for them.
So if this is a gruesome hypothetical, but if a shooter came in, and would you defend your kids first or a stranger's kids? Or are they the same?
So, first of all, that's not going to change your opinion on healthcare. It's not going to change your opinion on
obviously defend your kids first, right?
But of course you're going to defend your kids.
No, but that's the point, is that so you have an attachment to your kids, so that has changed you.
So of course you have an attachment to your own kids, of course.
Well, that's
of course I attack them first,
right?
No, but it doesn't change my view on the world, on humanity, on politics, on policy.
Right.
But if there's a shooting, of course I'm going to cover my kids first. I get it. But by the way, in the Israel scenario, but I wouldn't say, bomb other people. people's kids to protect
nor do I.
mine.
No, you know, I don't believe that. But my politics is all about protecting my kids.
So, okay, let me.
That's the difference.
Hold on.
And
hold on.
actually, that goes to the.
You're about protecting
everyone, right? And so, but that goes to the core, Charlie.
But
And that's why this is such an interesting conversation between
Yeah.
conservatives and progressives, because progressive ideology is help someone you don't know,
including non-American citizens.
So, I mean, generally speaking, I want to help the whole world, but of course, you take care of, you've got these circles. That, you got your family, nation, etc.
When people don't have
But my
families.
point is, you guys circle the wagons, and we think about everybody in a way that's empathetic.
But this is the problem: is abstractions like that is how we end up invading Iraq and forget that our veterans are starving because we worry more about foreign adventures than the immediate. And so,
but that was for the military-industrial complex and the oil companies.
But
that wasn't for us or our kids.
Look at Lindsey Graham, people like that have like very weird personal lives. They tend to not care as much about the immediate. They care much more about the foreign and the abstract. But I'm curious though that you don't think that family formation necessarily creates better politics.
I actually,
not at all.
I want to ask
Okay,
you something. So it's what you believe, right?
No,
So put that-
sorry, I don't mean to talk about it.
No, it's okay. Put that aside for a second. What you personally believe,
Yeah.
put that aside, and think about optics and political strategy. Do you at least concede that politically speaking, when it comes to optics, it is not advantageous to accuse childless people in America of not caring about the future of the country because they don't have kids? Like, that is an incredibly... People find that offensive,
But
right?
I mean, it's also very pro-family sentiment too, saying that.
I love family.
No,
I mean,
I'm glad.
That's also an accusation, right? Like the idea that if you don't have your own kids, you don't care about family. Like,
Well, I'm not saying that. What you're asking me is it smart politics? What he said was a couple years ago, before he was the VP, and I think that's important because, first of all, it's even before he was a Senate candidate. But even if he said it today, I would defend the essence of what he was saying, which is that when you have a group of people that are not attached, their public policy decisions are not immediately impacting the things that they cherish the most, and it's much more distant and much more detached and much more foreign, then public policy feels much more like playing risk than actually managing your home. And I think that's a big mistake. Conservatism at its best is trying to say, forget the abstractions. What's happening in the neighborhood? What's happening at church? What's happening with the family? But yeah, look, I share J.D. Vance's view on this.
Yeah, so I'll say one last thing, then I want to ask you about walls because you asked me about walls. So look, I wrote a lot about this in my book, actually, Justice is Coming, because that's my main thesis on the difference between the left and the right. That the right is not indecent. A lot of people on the left think, oh, they're immoral, they're bad, and of course the right thinks that about the left, etc. No, the right wing can be wonderful, but they have tighter wagons, right?
But do you understand that though? You know where that comes from.
Yeah, I totally get where it comes from.
And I get the energy where it's like, I want to save the entire world. I'm like, okay, but like, how about you try to not have 70 shootings a weekend in Chicago before you tell me you're going to fight climate change?
Well, I say we can.
We can, right?
No, I definitely say, but we could definitely do both, Charlie. It's not either or.
Let's stop the shootings.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, look, I would love to stop
like
the shootings.
50% of kids are childly obese in this country, right?
That's what them is stopping the shootings,
right?
Both in Chicago and the mass shootings and all of that. And there, us populists, right wing and left wing, agree because we say like, why are we spending money in Israel? Or you would say Ukraine, right? And Israel has universal health care, they have paid family leave, they have all these things that we would love and we don't have.
Right.
And great border policy.
Yeah, and so, well, we could disagree about that.
We got you there.
No, I don't.
And
No,
good deportations.
No, yeah, I would argue that we got you on that.
I don't want to go.
Israel's incredibly harsh and cruel, et cetera, on those things. But my point is, yeah, I get it. Take care of our families first before you start dropping bombs in the Middle East, et cetera.
We agree.
Oh, yeah, and so there are gradations of it, but don't hate the others. If they're outside your wagons, they're not necessarily your enemies. They just happen to be in a little bit further circle away from you, and we're trying to, as progressives, we're trying to get you to empathize with people outside your wagons. But okay, so we've discussed that. But I wanted to get back to Tim Walz.
You want to talk about Tim Walz?
Yeah. So you said, hey, you think that it's hurt the Democrats. I think it's helped the Democrats tremendously because he's done economically populist things. And now they're championing economically populist things. And you said earlier, that's popular, right? Housing prices, groceries, etc.
Venezuela voted itself into slavery.
So look, we can argue about the policies, and this has nothing to do with Venezuela, and I can prove that, etc. No, but no, it's not price controls. She did not. We're definitely against price controls. So she did not propose.
She proposed.
She proposed. I'll tell you that real quick. Then
I'm not being sarcastic.
No, not at all. So she said she's against price gouging and left it vague. There's already laws against price gouging. Like, for example, in a natural disaster, in a hurricane, you can't charge $200 for water. So she's saying, hey, I'm going to enforce those laws. By the way, she's not. Because first of all, the price gouging happened in like 21, 22, and it's abated already. It's already actually gone down. Second of all, she said grocery stores, that's the wrong target. It's actually consumer goods that were doing the gouging, not the grocery stores, right? All this indicates she doesn't really mean it, and she's not even going to do it even if we wanted her to do it. Right. But she definitely did not say price controls, and none of those policies are price controls. If she said price controls, I guarantee you I would say wrong. That is the wrong policy. Okay.
We did a segment where we spoke out against the idea of price controls, and I mean we have fairly recent history to reference, like what happened in the 1970s with price controls and how that led to.
Think of your people first, like for the same you first, like what the
However,
fuck?
there are some policies that she was specific about, especially as it pertains to housing. For instance, Kamala Harris has proposed laws that would ban private equity firms from purchasing up single-family homes, right? Which has driven up the price of homes. And what's really interesting is, again, going back to Donald Trump, what really worked for him in 2016 was similar economic messaging is now something that he's speaking out against because Kamala Harris is proposing.
Well,
really,
so
really interesting dynamic.
The BlackRock thing, I agree with. Blackstone or Blackstone?
Yeah.
Should not be able to buy single-family homes.
Oh, good. That's great agreement.
I've said it repeatedly. Same with foreign countries coming in and purchasing.
Oh, here. Okay.
You have a country of ownership, not renting. As far as the $25,000 per home, not a great idea. That will only boost the price of homes.
I agree with you on that.
It's not a great idea.
We need more inventory.
Yes, we need more inventory. So you have to deregulate. You also have to lower the price of energy, which brings up the price of everything. And you guys aren't going to like that, but that includes drill, baby, drill, and bringing down the price of oil and natural gas during this window where we want to try to have a housing boom.
I think we need more nuclear energy.
I agree. Nuclear is a great.
We're already number one in energy
top
production.
Energy producers, but we're also the top energy exporters,
Which
is a problem.
Well, I think we should continue to be an energy exporter. The price of oil is still too high for too many people. We should get back down to $40, $50 a barrel, which, by the way, that if you want to stick it to the oil and gas industry, bring the price of oil down. Their margins go down significantly. Secondly, what we're talking about, private equity on board for that. You should not have major firms coming in and renting back. 1/4 of all home purchases in Q1 of this year were major asset management firms buying homes for the mere purpose of outbidding Americans so they can rent them back. No, I mean, I have no disagreement there.
So oil prices real quick. I mean, you talk about, we should continue being the top oil exporters.
Yes.
And producing more is going to lower the prices. But remember, we're talking about the OPEC cartel, where other countries are part of this global market. And if Saudi Arabia decides, you know what, we're going to withhold production because we want to make as much money as possible from fossil fuels, they're going to do it. I mean, they've done it before.
Of course. And the way you prevent that is you flood the zone with oil. So you produce more oil, and then you become the new Saudi Arabia, so you get to determine what the price is. So
there's a lot of different ways to do that. I understand that philosophy.
And you also prevent war with Iran, which would then spike the price.
We don't need to go to wars in the Middle East.
I'm saying prevent the war with Iran.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, because you go to 150 a barrel if you have war with Iran.
Yeah, and I'm scared to death that they're going to go to war now on behalf of Israel. And then we're going to have $150 gas prices. And so that's a very complicated issue. A lot of things that drive supply and demand in oil. But the reason that I'm not in favor, like, for example, $30 billion in subsidies still to this day for oil companies, oil and gas companies. Why? Why are we giving $30 billion of taxpayer money?
Or are they subsidies?
A combination of subsidies and tax credits. And so they don't need tax credits. They're the most profitable corporations in the world.
So can you explain in greater detail? Is that for startup costs? Is that... Because I've heard lots of mixed opinions on it. It's easy to say $30 billion. What specifically is that?
Yeah, so they have about $15 billion to incentivize production.
Guys, we're gonna go to this back to the DNC convention for today. We're
still that strong. Iran, North Korea, and especially China watch closely. What's Trump's answer? He invited Russia to do, and these are his words, not mine, whatever the hell they want. Vice President Harris has always championed America's support for NATO, for Ukraine, and for the Ukrainian people. On the Senate Intelligence Committee, she investigated Russian interference in our election.
Oh, thank God.
She defends free and fair elections everywhere. You already know how Trump feels about those. Donald Trump
he's a robot.
Skipped his intelligence briefings.
I don't know. I mean, he's fine.
He was too busy sucking up to dictators and dreaming of becoming one himself. Trump thinks that Americans who have made the ultimate sacrifice are suckers and losers. If we fall for that again and make him the commander-in-chief, the only suckers would be us.
Got him.
Kamala Harris knows that standing with our allies means standing up for Americans. She'll keep modernizing our military to support our troops and to support our veterans like our next Vice President, Tim Walz. The world laughs at Trump, literally. But folks, it is not funny. When he was president, that meant the world was laughing at us. The threats we face are too serious. The sacrifices our service members make are too sacred. The alliances we've spent decades building are too critical. That's what's at stake now. And the choice isn't even close. But in Arizona and nationwide, this election will be. We'll win in the same way we launch rockets into space and land fighter jets on an aircraft carrier as one team on one mission. State by state, voter by voter, coming together. No country is better than ours at solving big problems. So, on November 5th, let's prove that America is still the leader the world needs today by electing the leader we need right now, Kamala Harris. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I mean, it's just very, like...
Do you guys want to stick with it?
Very
Next up is
standard.
Leon Panetta. Do you want to listen?
Oh, we should listen.
Yeah, we should listen to that.
Let's keep it VO until they start, so you guys can chat.
Okay. Yeah, we've got bunch of Senate hopefuls this evening. There's Leon Panetta coming on, but you've got Ruben Gallego later as well, who's running for Senate.
Gretchen.
And Gretchen, who's obviously governor of Michigan. All right, we can take a listen to Leon here.
Secretary
I'm proud
of
to
Defense,
have served
CIA Director,
in the Army, the Congress, the White House, Chief of Staff, CIA Director, and Secretary of Defense.
This guy's resume is
deep state in the house.
Amazing.
I've looked into the eyes of our warriors and deployed them into battle. I gave the order directing our Special Operations Forces to fly 2 helicopters 150 miles into Abbottabad at night. And by the time the sun rose, Osama bin Laden was dead.
playing the hits here.
So
Because-
coaching enough to do his own hit.
Because nobody
Biden was against
attacks our country and gets away with it. Nobody.
That's probably his best convention.
Tommy Veter, Pod Save, says Leon
That's-
Panetta's a super nice guy,
that's
but
what
having
our
him speak in
warriors
prime time
do.
on Thursday.
That's what our warriors
I mean,
do. Our warriors
Yeah, but he was the
need
CIA director,
a
so if
tough,
he asked to speak in primetime on Thursday
cool-headed
night,
commander in
He's speaking
chief
in prime time.
say
on
no.
Thursday
to
night.
defend our democracy.
Somebody tweeted that
from
Mark
tyrants
Kelly's
and
doppelganger,
terrorists.
Breaking Bad actor,
We need
the guy who played
Kamala
Hank, is
Harris
currently in
behind the
DNC
resolute
Green
desk.
Producer Griffin,
She
But the
knows
focus is
could you hand me a warm
she
beer
knows
from the
the
Miller Lite
tyrant
box, please?
when she
Absolutely. We
sees
only have
one.
cold ones. I'm sorry.
No,
and our
I'd rather have a warm
allies
one.
know a leader when they see one.
I'm listening to the human.
Guys, I'm gonna go to TYT. Sometimes the competition is between TYT and Breaking Point, and sometimes TYT has a better
contrasting Donald Trump's emotional whine.
has better conversations. I feel like that. I feel like TYT a lot of time, including Jink, you girl, those guys. You know, they bring a lot of great conversations. So it's good to see that.
Sucking up to dictator's approach and portraying Harris, who a lot of people don't see as being a creature of foreign policy or having experience in that world, as someone that you can see safeguarding America. I think it's for normies. I think.
On the Senate Intelligence Committee and as vice president, she worked with more than 150 world leaders. She's looked our allies in the eye and
They
said,
always do.
America
Never the nose.
has your back. Trump would abandon our allies and isolate America. We tried that in the 1930s. It was foolish and dangerous then, and it's foolish and dangerous now.
You throwing shade at FDR?
Listen to President Reagan. President Reagan. Isolationism never was and never will be an acceptable response to tyrannical governments. Never. Trump tells tyrants like Putin they can do whatever the hell they want. Kamala Harris tells tyrants, the hell you can, not on my watch.
Well, she will.
She will.
I don't think she's had the opportunity.
President Zelensky to fight back against Russia. She knows that protecting their democracy protects our democracy as well. Look, Donald Trump does not understand the world, and he does not understand the service and sacrifice of our military. Our fallen veterans are not suckers. They are not losers. They are our heroes.
John's right. This is a speech for normies. I know too much about Panetta's record.
Kamala Harris
Most people will have
honor
no.
our veterans. And in Tim Walz,
I couldn't remember what he looked like.
we will have
I was
a
familiar
vice
with him,
president
but
who has
he's
served
a background player.
in uniform honorably for 24 years. Kamala Harris understands this moment. It is a moment of danger and a moment of opportunity. She'll keep America's military the strongest in the world, the strongest ever known. And she understands what our military is for. The role of our military is to defend us from foreign enemies. It is not to threaten
Hey, we got money.
Americans, and it sure as hell isn't to put immigrants in camps.
And also to protect Israel for the rest of our lives. And if they start wars, to help them end those wars and to fund it, et cetera, et cetera. I think he's a slightly better public speaker than Mark Kelly.
Since World War II, Republican and Democrat, has shared the belief that America must protect democracy in the world. Every president has honored our veterans and their sacrifices. Every president, but one. But one. So we face a critical choice: to vote for someone who stands with our military and stands up for democracy, or someone who will disrespect our heroes and undermine our democracy. My fellow Americans, there is only one choice. One choice. And let me tell you something. When she takes her oath of office, as she will this January,
Panetta gives me strong Kissinger vibes. Yeah, the whole time I've been thinking, like, he's not as bad Kissinger, I guess.
That we can trust. God bless our veterans, and God bless our country.
Yeah, if you took Kissinger and combined him with William Barr, you'd get Leon Panetta.
Yeah. No, I feel bad because Kissinger kills a ton of people.
Oh, yeah, no.
Right? And Panetta's not that
historic figures like Kissinger.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's like comparing him to Attila the Hun. But he did covered up abuses.
Or to Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah. Covered up abuses of the CIA, very conservative Democrat. In the old days, progressives would have like loathed that speech. Oh, Ruben Gallego, this is interesting. Running for Senate in Arizona.
And the proudest Arizonan you'll ever meet. But I am even prouder to be a Marine. Rah!
Wait, I'm not a
My mom raised us alone on a secretary's salary.
They're close.
I slept on the floor. I worked every job I could. Meat packing, construction, making pizzas. I made it to Harvard with no money or connections. Other kids were happy because they were at Harvard. I was happy because I finally had a mattress.
Jesus.
Then I enlisted, fought alongside my brothers with Lima 325 in Iraq. They called us Lucky Lima, but our luck ran out. We saw some of the heaviest combat of the war. And when we got home, the government failed to help us readjust. We have a duty to care for our patriots who serve our nation. For the Vietnam veteran and Buckeye who relies on the VA for his medication. For the Afghan veteran in Pittsburgh who finally got treatment for his PTSD. For the Marine in Milwaukee who relies on the benefits she earned. For my Navajo brothers and sisters who serve the Marines with me, I remember you too. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are fighting for them. Kamala Harris has delivered more benefits to more veterans than ever before, and has achieved the lowest veterans unemployment rate in history. Vice President Harris has stood up for us and our families always. Tim Walz served for 24 years. His passion for veterans earned him respect on both sides of the aisle, and he stands with us too. In fact, let me introduce you to some of the many Democrats who understand what service means, because we put country over politics. We were proud to wear the uniform, and we're proud serving our country in city halls, state capitals, the U.S. House, and the Senate.
Yeah, these are all Democratic legislators who are in the armed services.
Represent the best of our country. We stand united as veterans, Democrats, and patriots to fight for everyone who serves.
Tammy Duckworth, Mark Kelly.
But politicians like Donald Trump, they don't stand with us. They call patriots like Senator McCain losers. John McCain was an American hero. Show some respect.
Roseanne Barr.
Trump's Project 2025 will slash veteran benefits and force VA hospitals to close across the nation. Show some respect. So, for the 18-year-old who decides to enlist, for the families like mine who prayed every night that their loved one would come home, for our troops stationed thousands of miles away, for my Marines of Lima Company, let's elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who don't just respect our service, but revere it. Because the veterans who defended this country aren't just the reason we can sleep at night. They're the reason we can dream. And together, we'll fight for our veterans and everyone who served our country. Thank you.
USA. So Ruben Gallego is among the more progressive congressmen. So the fact that we hope he will replace Sinema in that seat would be amazing. Not the fact, but the hope that he replaces her. It would be great. It would be fantastic. And look, normally the backstory is often mythology and creates this archetype of a hero, etc. Different archetypes of heroes. But in his case, in my experience, growing up poor or middle class makes you so much more likely to be a progressive. Have I met wealthy people who are born wealthy who are progressives? Yes. Have I met a lot of them? No. And look, I'm open-minded to everyone, happy to have everyone within the tent, right? But in my experience, guys who grow up not having a mattress to sleep on, they have a little bit more empathy for other human beings, right? Yes. And you know how many people I know that went to Harvard and then joined up in the military? About 3.
Yeah, that's the first I've heard of, actually.
Yeah. No, to be fair, Buttigieg was also in the military.
Oh, he's a Harvard guy, yeah.
Right? But look, okay, now I'm being unfair, but with Buttigieg, I feel like he did that because he was going to run for office. Whereas Gallego actually did it.
Yeah.
He had no plan to run for office.
On some level, it's probably unfair, but that would be my suspicion as well.
Yeah. All right, Gretchen.
He still did it. He still did it.
Big Gretch in Michigan. There you go. Gretchen,
Donald
what
Trump
Michigan
called me that woman from Michigan as an insult. Being a woman from Michigan is a badge of honor. Like women across America, we just GSD. Get stuff done.
How did I know that? That was so good.
You're a genius. Did you go to Harvard and then enlist?
I joined the sandwich generation. Sandwiched between working and raising my newborn and caring for my mom, who was dying from brain cancer. It was hard, but not extraordinary. It's life. Those nights reminded me who I was fighting for. People just trying to make it. Kamala Harris knows who she's fighting for, too. She took care of her mom, who also battled cancer. As president, she'll fight to lower the cost of health care and elder care for every family. She's lived a life like ours. She knows us. Donald Trump doesn't know you at all. You think he understands that when your car breaks down, you can't get to work? No. His first word was probably chauffeur.
Speaking of rich people
You think
who
he's
have no
ever
empathy.
had to take items out of the cart before checking out? Hell, you think he's ever been to a grocery store?
Yeah.
That's what the chauffeur is for.
How much could a grocery store cost? $10?
But Kamala Harris, she gets us. She sees us. She is us. Look, We've all lived through a lot of history over the past few years. Floods and fires, an attempted coup, a plot, and a pandemic. It's exhausting. We don't know what the next 4 years will bring. But what we do know is this. Through it all, your life won't stop. You're gonna have to get to work, pick up the kids, and pay your bills. And then one day, when you're just trying to get everyone out the door, a news alert goes off. Something happened. Something hit the fan. You'll ask, is my family gonna be okay? And then you'll ask, who the hell is in charge? What if it's him? What if it's that man from Mar-a-Lago? I know, in a crisis, we need someone strong enough to come up with a plan, to tell the truth, and to bring people together. Right now, before the crisis, is when we get to choose. Why wouldn't we choose the leader who's tough, tested, and a total badass?
She's feisty.
I know who I want as our commander-in-chief. America, let's choose Kamala Harris.
Oh, okay, that's it. All right, I figured it out. She's brunette Gina Davis. I've been trying to figure it out the whole time, ever since I've ever seen Gretchen Whitmer.
Yeah, I can see.
I'm like, she's somebody, she's somebody, she looks like somebody. Gina Davis, that's it, finally.
How long was that speech?
Not that long. Why?
She's like a big star. I thought she would be on for 15 minutes or something. I felt like that was like a 4-minute speech.
Yeah, by the way, Eva Longoria had almost as many DNCs as Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
She's at every DNC.
I am
Not just
so
at it, give
excited
speeches.
to be here tonight. What an honor to be part of this historic moment, and y'all are part of it.
She's so comfortable up there.
Look, I have known Kamala Harris for more than a decade, and she comes from a family a lot like mine, and I'm sure a lot like yours. We were both raised knowing that no one was gonna hand us anything, especially as women. That we were gonna have to touch every rung of the ladder to get ahead. We were gonna have to work really hard. Now, she worked at McDonald's, but I worked at Wendy's. And look at us now. You see, Kamala and I were able to see beyond the horizon because our families supported our big dreams. Well, guess what? As Americans, we're all part of one big family. Somos familia.
I know what that means.
And as familia, we have to have each other's back. We have to support each other's dreams because Kamala's success is our success. And she supports us to dream big too. So let me tell you, in the Latino community, in our community, we have a saying, sí se puede, which means yes.
Yes.
It means yes, we can. But tonight,
I heard that.
I'm here to tell you, yes, she can. So we're going to say, she se puede. So when someone asks you, is she ready to lead this country forward? We're going to say, she se puede. When somebody says, is she qualified for the job? We're going to say, she se puede. When somebody asks, is she going to be the first female president of the United States? We're going to say, she se puede. Our voices, our vote, we're going to decide this election. And let me tell you, the energy tonight isn't just here in Chicago, it's all across the country. People are gathered at watch parties everywhere to celebrate Kamala Harris. Say hello.
You know, I keep forgetting Kamala Harris is going to be the first female president if she wins.
Let's get to work. Let's turn all of this enthusiasm and joy into action between now and November 5th. Let's go. She se puede. She se puede.
So I was worried that Josh Shapiro was going to use the "Si se puede" line.
Because to make the impression complete?
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, don't do it, brother. Don't do it. But she said puede. That's clever. I like it.
Yeah.
Nice job, Eva. Come back for the next
It bothers me linguistically, but the interesting thing is, I don't see him as doing as much of an impression as people say. I feel like Hakeem Jeffries did twice as much of an Obama impression as Josh Shapiro.
All right, here's Adam Kinzinger, former Republican congressman.
Thank you. I'm Adam Kinzinger, and I am proud to be in the trenches with you as part of this sometimes awkward alliance that we have to defend truth, defend democracy, and decency. I was just a kid when I was drawn to the party of Ronald Reagan, to his vision of a strong America, the shining city on a hill. I was a Republican for 12 years in Congress, and I still hold on to the label. I never thought I'd be here, but listen, you never thought you'd see me here, did you?
Well, we really didn't bring much thought.
I've learned something about the Democratic Party, and I want to let my fellow Republicans in on the secret. The Democrats are as patriotic as us. They love this country just as much as we do.
It's not good for the Democratic Party historically that they have to clarify that. But they are clarifying it and trying to fix it.
And having a Republican be the one that clarifies it is interesting.
Yeah.
And they are as eager to defend American values at home and abroad as we conservatives have ever been. I was relieved to discover that because I've learned something about my party too. Something I couldn't ignore. The Republican Party is no longer conservative. It has switched its allegiance from the principles that gave it purpose to a man whose only purpose is himself. Donald Trump is a weak man pretending to be strong. He is a small man pretending to be big. He's a faithless man pretending to be righteous. He's a perpetrator who can't stop playing the victim. He puts on, listen, he puts on quite a show, but there is no real strength there. As a conservative and a veteran, I believe true strength lies in defending the vulnerable. It's in protecting your family. It's in standing up for our Constitution and our democracy. That is the soul of being a conservative. It used to be the soul of being a Republican. But Donald Trump has suffocated the soul of the Republican Party.
We can't breathe.
Good line.
Yep.
His fundamental weakness has coursed through my party like an illness, sapping our strength, softening our spine, whipping us into a fever that has untethered us from our values. Our democracy was frayed by the events of January 6th, as Donald Trump's deceit and dishonor led to a siege on the United States Capitol. That day, I stood witness to a profound sorrow, the desecration of our sacred tradition of peaceful transition of power, tarnished by a man too fragile, too vain, and too weak to accept defeat. How can a party claim to be patriotic if it idolizes a man who tried to overthrow a free and fair election?
Yeah.
How can a party claim to stand for liberty if it sees a fight for freedom in Ukraine, an attack pitting tyranny against democracy, a challenge to everything our nation claims to be, and it retreats? It equivocates. It nominates a man who is weirdly obsessed with Putin. And his running mate who said, quote, "I don't care what happens in Ukraine." Yeah, and he wants to be vice president. Yeah. How can a party claim to be conservative when it tarnishes the gifts that our forebears fought for? Men like my grandfather, who served in World War II, who believed in a cause bigger than himself, and he risked his life for it behind enemy lines. To preserve American democracy, his generation found the courage to face down armies. Listen, all we're asked to do is to summon the courage to stand up to one weak man.
This is a good speech.
Some have questioned why I've taken the stand I have. The answer is really simple, ladies and gentlemen. We must put country first. And tonight, as a Republican speaking before you, I'm putting our country first. Because the fact is, I do belong here. I know Kamala Harris shares my allegiance to the rule of law, the Constitution, and democracy. And she is dedicated to upholding all three in service to our country. Whatever policies we disagree on pale in comparison with those fundamental matters of principle, of decency, and of fidelity to this nation. Listen, to my fellow Republicans, if you still pledge allegiance to those principles, I suspect you belong here too. Because democracy knows no party. It's a living, breathing ideal that defines us as a nation. It's the bedrock that separates us from tyranny. And when that foundation is fractured, we must all stand together, united, to strengthen it. If you think those principles are worth defending, then I urge you, make the right choice.
You know, Sean Astin could play Kinzinger in a movie.
Vote for our bedrock values and vote for Kamala Harris. God bless you.
He was actually voted 50 most beautiful people on Capitol Hill. Okay. You ready for this? Anna, listen to this. Adam Kinzinger was voted a Wisconsin Red Cross Hero of the Year because he saw a woman get her throat sliced in front of him. He jumped in to defend her, even though he had no weapon and the other guy had a knife. He wrestled the knife away from him, and saved her life.
I did not know that.
Damn, Adam Kinzinger.
How has that never come up?
I know. Isn't that amazing? So this brother's a hero in a couple of different ways.
Wow.
Okay, listen.
I think Trump would do that.
The only country she'd ever known to chart her own path in America. She came here to pursue an education, but she stayed here to build a life. Her name was Dr. Kamala Gopalan Harris. But we called her Mommy. Mommy was so many things to so many people. A civil rights activist, a scientist, a devoted mother to her two little girls. But most of all, Mommy was a trailblazer who defied the odds and defined herself. And when it came to coming, Mommy had great expectations for us, but she had even greater expectations of us. She raised us to believe that we could be and do anything. And we believed her. You see, Mommy understood the power and the possibility that come with knowing and showing who you truly are. She knew we could be the authors of our own stories, just as she'd been the author of her own. Mommy's journey and the opportunity that she wanted for Kamala and me, that's a distinctly American story. We may
the same
all
mannerisms
have
as Kamala, the way
different
she shifts her weight.
different struggles.
But wow, this is Kamala Harris' sister. Wow, she's pretty attractive. A very, very attractive woman.
Or different perspectives. But what binds us together is the fervent desire to be free, to fulfill our God-given
I was just
potential.
thinking, she
Kamala's
is a lawyer, they're saying,
entire life
has done
has
political
been
work,
about
but I don't think of her as like a
fighting for each
public
of us
figure.
to have that
And she
freedom.
is seemingly 100%
And like so
comfortable in front of this
many
massive crowd.
Americans,
It is
Kamala
amazing.
knows what it's like to be underestimated and be counted out. She knows what it's like to be the underdog and yet still beat the odds. And now she has created so much electricity, so much optimism, so much joy throughout the nation, and it is why we need her leadership in this historic moment.
See that mannerisms?
We
of
are
Kamala Harris
living in a
there?
time when some are trying to divide us, to separate us in ways that make it difficult for us to come together. Well, look, my sister rejects that view. Where others push darkness, Kamala sees promise. Where others feel detachment, Kamala fosters connection. Where others want to drag us back to the past, my sister says, hold up now, we are not going back.
Yeah, I decided that.
Because Kamala understands we have so much more in common than what separates us. She knows the measure of our success isn't just winning an election. It's about who we bring along and lift up in the process. And so as I look out at all of you today and take in this incredible moment, I so wish that Mommy could be here tonight. I can just see her smiling, saying how proud she is of
guys.
Kamala.
This is too hot.
And then, without missing a beat, she say, that's enough. You got work to do. She would tell all of us to roll up our sleeves and get to work, to elect a leader who sees the potential in each of us, a leader who cares for all of us, a leader who fights for every one of us. Our Democratic nominee, my big sister, the next president of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Is she up next?
I don't think so. I think Roy Cooper.
No, can't be. So you're right, John. I've been on the floor many times at these conventions, and it is daunting.
It's a lot of people.
It's a giant number of people. The fact that folks like that step up and are not that nervous is amazing and unbelievable.
Or that if she is, she covers it very well. I mean, she's a lawyer, she's worked on campaigns and stuff, but still directly addressing a massive crowd like this that's difficult stuff.
Roy
Hello,
Cooper,
America. I'm Roy Cooper, the last guy standing between you and the moment we're all waiting for. So I'm going to get right to it. All week, you've heard stories about my friend Kamala. I want to take you behind the scenes of one of them. 2011 was a rough time for American homeowners. Hundreds of thousands were losing their homes to illegal foreclosure. I was Attorney General in North Carolina, while Kamala had just become California's. All the AGs were close to a settlement with the big banks, and it was a pretty good deal. would have meant $4 billion for California families who'd been ripped off.
We talked about this a few times.
I know that sounds like a lot, but Kamala said, hang on a minute. I've met these families. I know what they've been through, and they deserve more. She went toe-to-toe with some of the world's most powerful executives, and she refused to give in. Let me tell you, this was a huge risk, but she knew it was a risk worth taking. That's Kamala. And we all know what happened. The banks caved. That $4 billion for California families became $20 billion. That was the first time I witnessed Kamala in action. And what I saw was a leader who does exactly what she says she's going to do, who never will
Progressives
settle
super
for
hard for that
less.
to happen.
America, we got a lot of big fights ahead of us. And we've got one hell of a fighter ready to take them on.
Yeah, that was that $4 billion deal was a crooked deal. But Kamala Harris, a lot of credit for pushing
And
it
tonight,
higher.
I want the American people to know, even if you don't agree with her on everything, Kamala Harris will fight for you to the very end. For families who need better health care or a safer place to live, Kamala will fight for you. For parents who want better schools for their kids. For workers worried about a secure retirement for themselves, Kamala will fight for you. For any one of our allies, anywhere in the world, wondering if America still has your back, remember this. Kamala will fight for you. And when she fights, we win. Kamala's ready. Kamala's ready. The question is, are we? Are we going to stand up and fight for Kamala like she'll stand up and fight for us? All right. If you're ready, my home state of North Carolina, stand up. Stand up, Pennsylvania. Stand up, Michigan. Stand up, Wisconsin. Stand up, Georgia. Stand up, Nevada. Stand up,
Random
Arizona.
Connecticut, you're
Stand
good.
up, America.
Yeah.
Are we going to
Rhode Island,
stand up?
take a load off.
Are we going to
Texas,
fight?
don't need you.
Are we going to vote?
That'd be nice.
Are we going to win? You bet we are. Let's go get them.
The electoral college is insane. That there's only about 10 relevant states. The rest of us can just F off, right? It's insanity. And you know, the person who wins the popular vote doesn't win, et cetera. Anyway, among the vice presidential candidates that we had, I think that I would rank, now that we've listened to all of them in this context, I think Tim Walz was the #1 best pick after, like, not just because he's a progressive, but after watching them, seeing how they perform, et cetera, Tim Walz was definitely the correct pick, both because of the progressive thing and because of how good he is.
Yeah.
So then I say Gretchen Whitmer was pretty good. Josh Shapiro was pretty good. Josh Shapiro got the crowd going nuts. I thought it was just okay, but the crowd loved it, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then Mark Kelly at the bottom, Cooper, okay, right? And Pritzker, I didn't get this chance to say I was on break. And then Bashir was okay, not bad, but
I thought Buttigieg was okay.
Buttigieg was okay, but I would have hated him for other reasons. But he was in the middle of the pack in terms of the speeches. The other guy who was super interesting and really good and dynamic, and I'm looking forward to the rest of his career, is Wes Moore.
I knew yeah.
Yeah.
Well, was he being talked about as a possibility?
Yeah,
I didn't see it in any of the final lists.
So barely, they weren't going to pick him. They had him and Warnock theoretically on the list, but they weren't going to pick two black folks. And I know it's getting absurd now that we're going white, black, black, white, etc. for the Democratic Party, but nevertheless, we are.
And yeah, he was good.
Yeah. By the way, I wouldn't care about that. I think that Kamala Harris Westmore would be a great team, right? I wouldn't be concerned about it 1 second.
Well,
in fact, I think Kamala Harris, Gretchen Whitmer, double down on women. I would also be a great ticket. But as it turns out, Tim Walz makes the best thing.
Yeah, before I knew really much about Walz, either his record or how he was in terms of speaking, I thought Whitmer was a good pick. And I think she'd still be good, but I think Walz is just a great compliment. I think their chemistry is really good. I love the signal it sends to progressives. I think it's a good pick in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's a good contrast too. You know, that you can go the same, you know, Whitmer, Kamala Harris, or you can go contrast. And he's kind of a perfect contrast / compliment to what she's got to offer. Okay, real quick, guys. So we watched the Tim Walz video because there's a lot we didn't know about Tim Walz. They're on the Kamala Harris video. They're going over everything we've covered on the Young Turks, right? So let me read some names real quick, and then I want to come back to make some important points about the speeches we just saw. But GT Buzzsaw, Dragon Got Baked, Austin Ryan, Fidelia, Skelly, The Stallion, Jay Jesper 82. You guys are amazing. TYT.com/DNC. Trying to now get to 50. Nice round number. That would be terrific. We appreciate you guys. And you know, I say that I'm going to try to call everyone who's given over $100. So make sure you include your phone number if you want to call. And by the way, guys, I don't just call people that gave over $100. I do some random calls for folks under 100 too. So you guys are going to keep me busy for days and days calling you guys. So, and I appreciate that, and I love it, and I look forward to talking to all of you. TYT.com/DNC. Thank you for sending us here and making all this possible.
And we're above 49,000.
Yeah, so almost there. So Fernie Buns, thank you for the donation, appreciate it. Let me do a shout out for the new YouTube members. Jean-Philippe Lacour, Sneaky Dog Incorporated, which is hilarious. C. Kurz 48, Art Vandalay, Jennifer Selvig, and Peace Be On You. Get it? Peace be upon you, but it's pawn. Okay, love it. Thank you guys. Hit the join button below. Become a Young Turks member. Be part of this nation that believes in truth, positive change. And for God's sakes, let's challenge power a little bit. So that's why we love Tim Walz, because he seems to have challenged power out of nowhere. Here comes this teacher and runs for office, wins in a red district. And you know what? Thank God Tim Walz was in a red district, because he was dirt poor. If he lived in a blue district or even a purple district, the Democratic Party wouldn't have let him run. They would have swapped him out for someone who was wealthy, who you know, they always look for. He has one of the things they always look for. Number one thing they look for is wealthy. Number two is veteran, and he's a veteran. Okay, and so because they like the optics of it.
Yeah.
But and there's a couple of things that they look for, but number one by a landslide is wealthy or knows a lot of other wealthy people.
Or ideally both.
Yeah. So is Anna coming in? Yeah. So guys, check this out as Kamala Harris is coming in. Obviously, we're going to leave her off. We'll be right back.
It's the next president.
Guys, this is Kamala Harris now on stage. She has an interesting story, guys. Very interesting, because here's a woman that's like mixed with Indian and black. There's not a lot of Indian and black women. I'm telling you. You can look around. It's mostly, most people that are mixed in the black community are usually white. But she's Indian and black. And the father is Jamaican, but he looks like a light-skinned Jamaican. So she has a little bit of white too, guys. There's a little bit of whiteness in her. Let me see. I have to see this. Let me see. Kamala Harris' father. Wow, she's gorgeous. I love her. It's amazing that she made it that far in the world, man. That's amazing. Her story is amazing. This is what we were waiting for. This is the big one, guys. This is why we were here. You know, we were waiting for Kamala Harris to speak, and there she. Look at what she's doing now. Yeah, she definitely is connecting with me because her father is from Jamaica. I'm from Haiti, so I'm Caribbean. Other people is gonna connect with her differently. She's everywhere. It's kind of like Obama, somebody that's everything for everybody. You know what I'm saying? So that's the way I look at him. Obama and Kamala, I'm everything for everybody.
That put me.
America has a lot of issues, guys, and we need money. We need money. Like we need to get out there and do the work so that we can get that kind of money because it's real, man. Like this money thing. This money thing is real. It's like we cannot let Ukraine get. You cannot let Ukraine. We cannot allow Ukraine to be taken by Russia. We cannot allow that to happen.
Stand.
I think. Let me see. Hold on. Shit. Oh, sorry, guys.
And no. Would hurt his campaign.
That's what he wrote. It all.
Crystal, you want to do it?
Okay. No, go ahead.
Okay.
You want to keep this up, or you want to go straight to y'all?
Let's for a few seconds keep it up, and then you can go to them after. It's nice to start with.
Okay.
On y'all.
We
All right,
good?
3, 2, 1. All right, everybody, we are coming out of Kamala Harris's speech. Officially, doesn't seem like there will be a special guest, and we'll give you all
Heartbreaking
of
turn of
our
events.
reactions. Not as long of a speech as I initially expected. I think it rolled in roughly around a half-hour mark or so. Started with biography, had some economy, foreign policy, and then some of the generic wrap-up there. So, Crystal, overall,
I mean,
what was your impression?
Listen, I can't get away from the Gaza portion, which just absolutely sucked.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's one thing. The key thing here for me is the language around October 7th is appropriately evocative, right? It's visceral. It's about the horrors. There is responsibility ascribed for the atrocities that were committed on October 7th by Hamas. When it's Palestinians, suddenly they're just suffering. By who? Why? For what? She doesn't say. And I mean, that's typical, right? I guess she said more about them than probably Joe Biden would have. But if you're looking for any indication that there would be a different policy here with regard to Israel, like, there's zero indication of that. And the entire foreign policy portion, Zach, you were making this point of, like, you know, Hillary Clinton sort of leans into trying to be super hawkish to overcome, like, this sense of, you know, oh, because I'm a woman, people want the entire foreign policy section read to me like that, you know, going in, like, sort of basically like warmongering against Iran, and I will create the most lethal military that has ever existed, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, all right.
Yeah,
calm down, lady.
Lethal military. I will never give Israel. I will never stop Israel's right to defend itself. I'll always give them the arms. I will bomb Iran if I need to. Oh, actually, Kim Jong Un, who we would, you know, like hope to make a deal with. Oh no, he's actually cheering for Donald Trump. It was very classic neoconservative rhetoric in that respect. Go ahead.
I just wanted, so David, do you have a? Want to just
David Sirota of Lever News, by the way.
Yeah,
so posting this separately. Go ahead.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I think that, but I also think that, again, what we were talking about before, the idea that she reflects the center of the Democratic Party, that was a very center of the Democratic Party speech.
Yeah.
And on the economy as well.
Yeah.
I mean, by the way, I also think that she has recognized, rightly so, fair or unfair, that her people view her as different from Biden as a vessel for economic policy.
Yeah.
Which I'm not exactly sure is completely fair, but she's benefiting from it.
Right.
Right? That she gets to say, I'm going to do I'm dealing with affordability, I'm going to deal with costs without having to answer for the criticism aimed at Biden.
Yeah.
And we should actually ask David while he's here for your thoughts on, there were a lot of references tonight to Kamala Harris post-2008, the recession, and they're building this myth of Kamala Harris as basically an economic populist in the midst of the recession back in 2008 and the aftermath of 2008. Haven't seen a ton of media fact checks of that other than from people like you, David.
Yeah, I mean,
about the AG settlement.
The housing stuff.
This gets wonky, so I'm going to ask the audience to stick with us, but it is important because she made it a central part both of her speech
all week,
and we had Roy Cooper who uses it to introduce her. So just give us
and
some
many
of the
others.
Yeah, I mean, the background is that she was part of a national mortgage settlement that was essentially a giveaway to the banks that created the financial crisis. Without getting into all of the details, that the banks should have been prosecuted criminally. The settlement was what essentially the banks wanted to be given
to get them off the legal hook.
Exactly.
Steve Mnuchin.
Yeah, and there was that she did not prosecute Steve Mnuchin,
despite people in her office wanting him to be prosecuted.
Right, but to your point, David, though, it is very telling that she has decided this is an area of her image that not only is she going to rehab, but the center of the Democratic Party, and I think the center of American politics, really, is to create this image as, I'm taking on the big banks. I'm delivering specifically for homeowners, and she has leaned into housing policy and read the tea leaves there.
Yes.
In terms of where people are. You know, a few things with regard to just
one other detail on the lie there, and
go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong there, but they talk about a $20 billion settlement.
Right.
My memory is that the banks got credit towards the $20 billion
for the losses that they suffered
right.
in the banking crisis.
Wow.
That's right. So
Wow.
I think what's bothersome about it, although I can see it from her political advisors, is that they can tell a story that is not just untrue, but that is the opposite of the truth. And very few people will know that or care about that,
Yeah.
which is probably realistic and also bad.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's why sites like yours and Drop Site News exist.
Emily, what do you think? What was your overall reaction?
So overall, I think it's very clear that Kamala Harris is good and she's not great. And one of the things that hurt her in 2019 is she had a lot of hype. And as she started talking more and more, there was a sort of myth of Kamala Harris that had been promoted. It's almost like it doesn't do her favors to get covers like that Time magazine cover.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because now the entire public has been primed to see her as some Obama-esque figure. And while I do think we've been talking about it all week, this convention has been well choreographed.
Yes.
It has looked good. They've hit a lot of good notes while avoiding some dicier elements. We're sort of talking about like so-called wokeness and how they managed to sort of thread that needle. Kamala Harris did a good job tonight, but she is not Barack Obama. And when you're telling people she's Barack Obama, you do run the risk of, as soon as she has to debate Donald Trump, as soon as she has to start doing more things without prompters, more interviews, it's possible that actually really backfires on them ultimately.
That's an astute point about, I mean, clearly, like, they're very intentionally leaning into even, adopting the hope piece.
Yes.
And,
yes, she can chance.
They
the
chanted
way
that
she can, exactly. Yes, she can. Like, they buried Hillary Clinton and Biden on day one to be like, go ahead, guys. Okay, let's not talk about that anymore. And one of the things in terms of a contrast with the way Hillary ran her campaign in 2016 that I found noteworthy is Kamala Harris spent a lot of time, which I don't love, but I thought worked effectively enough in this speech, on her bio at the beginning. And what I noticed about the way she set up herself, unlike Hillary, where it's like, I'm special, I'm breaking the glass ceiling,
Yes.
like, you're helping me basically realize my grand dreams and aspirations. The whole point of Kamala Harris's biographical narrative was to say, I'm just like you. I'm coming from the same neighborhoods that you're coming from. I had the same middle class upbringing that you either had or would like your children to have and aspire to. I grew up with the same nurses and teachers and firefighters that wanted to have their lawn look nice and work hard and play by the rules, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a very different biographical narrative than the narrative of, I'm the first female, I'm the first Black woman, I'm the first biracial woman, that was much more heavily leaned into in the Hillary Clinton campaign. I think that is very smart. We can we all know you're a trailblazer.
That's right.
We can see that. That's there. You don't have to say it. And so that strategy, which was evident throughout the week, I think was very effective. I thought the way she talked about Donald Trump was also very effective. When she had that line, she was like, in a lot of ways, he's unserious. He's an unserious man, which gets to the weird and belittling him. But she says the things he wants to do are serious. She talks not only about, January 6th and all of those sorts of things, but she also then immediately pivots to, hey, here are the things that he wants to do to you. He wants to take away your Social Security. He wants to take away the Affordable Care Act. He wants to get rid of the Department of Education. He wants to cut Head Start programming. So both the sort of grander, legitimate grievances against Donald Trump were there, but she also made it very concrete to people's lives in a way that I thought was smart and connected.
I don't think it was bad. A lot of her economic stuff was more negative than it was positive, as in, like, here's what Trump would do to you, and here's something that I would try and do contrast. And obviously not a lot of specifics. That's not really what you do. I didn't think the January 6th part of the speech was all that strong, actually. I thought that was part of the more, like, classic liberal
Yeah, that's kind of how it works. Freedom, freedom, freedom.
Right.
And they're regaining that word. And USA, USA, regaining patriotism, etc.
I love that.
Yeah, but she makes freedom a little bit more real in the speech. It's not generic. Like, everybody loves to say freedom. Yeah, but brother, what do you mean?
What does that mean? Exactly.
Yeah. So she, and other speakers also did a good job of this throughout the convention. One of the things that freedom means is the freedom to control your own body. If you don't have control over your own body, do you really have freedom?
No, and by the way, not having control over your own body, not having control over when you have children, or whether or not you can take advantage of medical advancements and fertility treatments to have children, that's not freedom. Like what Republicans have done with reproductive rights is not freedom. And it's not just about establishing a family. It's also about economic freedom for women,
Yeah.
And so I love the fact that she touched on that. I love the fact that she framed it as a freedom issue. I would have liked her to connect the dots to economic freedom, like how reproductive rights translate to economic freedom for women. It's okay. It's a small nitpicky thing. But overall, I thought that was a really strong message. And to your point, Jenk, she was specific, right? This nebulous, like, ooh, freedom thing that we've been hearing from Republicans. I mean, you can scratch beneath the surface and figure out that they're not talking about genuine freedom for ordinary Americans. They're talking about freedom for companies and corporations to do as they please, to pollute our air and water, to not have to deal with certain regulations that might cut into their bottom line. That's the kind of freedom they're talking about. Yeah. The kind of freedom she's talking about is freedom that on a very, very...
Guys, do you see this? Do you see how the Young Turk are like kind of like very happy with Kamala Harris' speech, but when it comes to like the breaking point, they kind of complaining. They think that she's not too strong on Israel. It's interesting to see the difference between the people. Let me go to the majority report. Let me see what they say. So the Young Turk is kind of like fully in the breaking point of judging Kamala Harris. They think she's. Let me see what these freaking guys are saying. This is
we are exonerated because the actual perpetrator confessed and DNA proved it. That guy says he still stands by the original guilty verdict. He dismisses the scientific...
Are the heirs to the...
She's not getting into any of the specifics of how she's going to help everybody.
It's do no harm mode.
Okay, great.
Total.
All right, well. Yeah, it's over. I thought that was very anticlimactic. But
we have
fascinating about this, which is also, I think, supports the idea that what they're trying to do is just make sure they don't do anything that draws too much attention, which is a weird thing to say about a presidential campaign. But she would be the first woman president. She would be the first woman president of color. I mean, you think about how much was invested in the concept of Hillary Clinton being the first woman president 8 years ago. And you think about how much there was this notion of like, you can't run a woman against Donald Trump. You can't run a person of color against Donald Trump because it will inspire all of his lunatic fringe people to come out, and that there's like a hidden cadre of misogynists and racists out there. Now, there very well may be, but they are like, let's put it this way. Her speech could have been delivered more or less by Martin O'Malley. And
100%.
And it wouldn't have been, you know, he would have to change maybe the gender reference a little bit and this and that, and, you know, a little bit about the parents. But there was no appeal to sort of like glass ceiling or the history about it. And that doesn't seem to be part of the campaign at all. And probably for good reason, because they sort of feel like, why wake what could be maybe not necessarily a sleeping giant, but a sleeping. I don't know, small, small person who could make a difference, because that's where the the campaign could be decided.
The people who want a woman president don't need to be reminded of it. But it is wild that, like, you know, like that Hillary lost. So, oh gosh, we can't run a woman. It's like, imagine if women were just the politicians, and then it's like JD Vance gave it a shot. It's like, well, you lost, so we can't ever run men again.
Well,
it's like, yeah,
I mean,
bad candidate.
That's what I was saying in you know, when the Biden debate dropout stuff was happening, right? I mean, look, I'm reflecting on it. I guess I wanted more, obviously, but we're not the target audience. Tim Walz going out there and talking about housing as a human right and healthcare as a human right last night, and then her giving just the most standard Democratic Party speech ever tonight probably seems strategic, but at the same time, Walz's favorables are higher than hers, right? So I wish she took a little bit more risk to bump those up, but from a strategic perspective, that's a do no harm thing. I mean, that's the same strategy they're deploying with frickin' Uncommitted. I mean, we hate it, right? But they feel like they don't want to call attention to any weaknesses. And the weaknesses that they do feel that they have, she came out and was more hawkish on them than like we would like on the left, like immigration, like being tough on crime or whatever. Those are the kinds of things that she emphasized and didn't emphasize the stuff that we like.
Well, you've also made the point about like how much excitement there has been around Walz relative to Harris, and that like there's, you know, sort of not necessarily an undercurrent, but like sort of woven into that is the idea that he's just like this white guy and she's not. And the inverse, the converse to that is that like her opportunity, and I would imagine this is what they are thinking. I mean, I remember, I think it was Charles Ogletree who had written, was it Ogletree?
Kind of
Who
like
was
the
one of the
classic hits,
professors
like,
from
he wants to
Harvard,
January
wrote-
6th was bad.
But
and-
those hits work.
That's definitely true. So, I mean,
Although they're already
people don't
voting
like
for
that
her,
about
though.
I just felt like, to me, I was like, I feel like the country's heard that before.
They're already
I
voting
was
for her.
I will say this was not as good of a speech as I thought she was going to give.
unless
I
I
thought it was like I don't know, almost like a C+ or something like that for her, just relative to the expectation, because she's been pretty decent on the stump. I mean, compare and contrast this to Tim Walz. I don't think you can even look at the two.
Listen, I think Tim Walz is an extraordinary talent. I would be very happy to skip over the Kamala Harris era right into the Tim Walz era, but that's not on you.
That's not what we're working.
Ryan, I want to get Ryan in here.
Unless I miss it on your point about her economic arguments being negative rather than positive. She easily could have done. You know, he's going to like try to repeal the ACA again. He's going to cut your Social Security, though he's been saying on the stump repeatedly, you know, he's not going to do that, and he's going to expand Social Security. But because he tried to do it, you know, and when he was president, she's can take that clean shot. She could have added, and I'm going to expand Medicare so it includes dental and vision, or I'm going to add a child. You're going to get a child tax credit. Did she do any of the care?
I did not hear the
she
word
rolled
child.
out.
Well, there was this opportunity economy thing.
She did. She did touch on some of those pieces. She did talk about some of those pieces. I'd have to go back and look at the transcript to see exactly which policies she name checked. I know she did talk about, like, you know, housing, expanding the housing supply. And
Could have added expanding Social Security. She hasn't come out with anything to respond to Trump, because Trump is out there saying that he's going to cut your taxes on Social
Yeah, he
Security.
literally said, I won't cut.
and that was one thing she definitely said, was that he wanted, and she's talking about his tariff policy. He wants to raise your taxes, the Trump taxes.
Yeah.
I'm going to give the working class, a giant tax cut. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I also think that one thing that's concerning about the whole election is that I think it's a smart thing to do and worthwhile to take apart Project 2025. But the mix of taking apart Project 2025 and not really offering a fleshed out agenda, what's the takeaway from the election? The less you say, the less you offer, the smarter your politics.
Well, but I think that was
true.
That was Obama.
I do. I mean, right. I do think it's accurate to a point.
Yes.
I think there's a middle ground between here's a 925-page point by point ideological treatise, and here's like one concrete policy.
I mean, she did give, she gave a policy speech
Yeah,
we do have some
she did,
concrete
right.
policies. So I
She
don't
did.
want to pretend like there's nothing that we know. She talked to, there's a whole freak out about, oh my God, price controls, blah, blah, blah.
28% corporate tax hike, she said.
But to your point, even the price gouging, price control conversation, like, she left that pretty vague about
totally.
what exactly that would actually look like. But
Also,
I mean,
congratulations to the Democrats for it taking 40 years of Heritage Foundation mandate for leadership to figure out that that's a good target.
Right. 100%.
Literally.
Hey, credit to them.
They said in the 80s they were like,
1980.
let's get rid of the Department of Education, and
I do
nothing
find
about
this
it.
ironic too, because I was thinking about it. There's not a policy section of her website, but all of Project 2025 is actually on her website. And I was thinking just about
That is kind of funny.
Of that, she's like, oh, if you go to KamalaHarris.com and read Project 2025,
2025, you're like-
but I'm like, but where's the policy section of your website?
right.
The unfortunate point I'm taking away from this election is that that's probably the correct play. If
I was
you're
gonna
Kamala,
say, yep.
is that you let everything kind of float into the ether, you go off the vibe, and you just kind of let people
Project.
absorb and
Yeah.
project
Well,
what they
this is
want,
the
which
Obama
is just
model.
like a Barack
This is
Obama.
the Obama model.
But
I mean,
she's not Obama.
And
That's the
wait,
interesting
let's
thing.
be honest, the Trump 2016 model too. I'm gonna give you the best
Very true.
healthcare in the world.
So true.
How?
Absolutely.
You know, like how?
Everyone will be covered.
Yeah, everyone will be covered.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
still the Trump model
Yeah.
because, yeah, I mean, he'll say, like, for example, he'll criticize Project 2025, but he won't say, he'll say, like, some parts are great and some
Yes.
parts are terrible, but he never elucidates which parts are the parts that are great and which parts are the parts that are terrible.
Comrade Crystal.
But this is the legitimate, very legitimate, one of many legitimate hits on her is she is a chameleon. Like, she has been all over the place ideologically, and she's trying to turn that into an asset of, then if you are progressive, you look at how she ran when she was running for president and how she voted in the Senate, and you're like, oh, she's a progressive. And I think the choice of Tim Walz adds some credibility to that framing of her, because he kind of comes with a ready-made agenda. It's an agenda that she has some track record, the care economy stuff that she has some track record of actually caring about. It maybe is the one thing you could look through on her career and say has been pretty consistent. And so you can project that onto her. She's obviously leaning very much into, like, Kamala the cop.
Yeah.
And,
That was big. I
going
wanted to get
after
to
the
that.
transnational
Don't let me forget.
gangs.
And the cartels, Crystal.
and-
Don't forget the
exactly,
cartels.
and
Yeah.
being, tough on crime
Yeah.
and all of them. They did a whole montage of her with, with a cop jacket on and with the cops and all that stuff, right? So you can project that. If you're like the Adam Kinzinger types, who are just looking for a kind of return to normal, I mean, she's Joe Biden's vice president, and that's just this very sort of like normie, decorum driven type of politics. So she's hoping she can pull off to election day what Barack Obama did, which is allowing people to see in her what they want to see in her. But to Emily's point, she's good out there. I thought she gave this speech well. She's obviously not Barack Obama. I mean, he is a generational political talent. We saw that on the stage this week, him and his wife. Exceptional political talents. Like, she is not that level. So it becomes a much more difficult trick to pull off. Then again, it's a short campaign, and she doesn't have to do it for all that long.
Yes.
And it's worth just mentioning that she's on the brink of the presidency without ever having really won like any competitive election.
Yeah.
Like, she was a machine politician. I wish Dan was here because he knows the California politics better. You're a little closer to California, so maybe.
And your name is David.
She had the
So.
last really competitive election she had must have been
AG. I think.
The AG primary.
Right.
Yeah, the AG primary, where
Which
she
is
had the support of the entire Bay Area machine.
Yeah.
So she had the advantage there. When she ran for Senate, it was against Linda Sanchez's sister.
Yeah.
It was just a totally hapless candidate.
Yep.
Whose seat was she?
Barbara Boxer.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who? Linda Sanchez?
No.
No.
Whose seat was Kamala?
I think it was Barbara.
It was Boxer.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
she replaced.
Right, Boxer. So she didn't. There was no Republican.
Right.
No serious Republican running, and she beat a hapless Democrat. And then she runs for president, and just gets absolutely wasted. Drops out in 2019 before any votes are cast, and then she gets picked as vice president.
Yeah.
And now here she is. Yeah. Is it
I mean,
remarkable?
I think we
career.
see that in the juggling back and forth, that we see from you can see Kamala the cop if you want, you can see BLM Kamala if you want. This is to Chris's point. Like, you really are all things to all people. I did think opportunity economy was very weak. Was something that both
Loretta
David
Sanchez.
Sirota and I both flagged was the VC shout out. I'm
Oh,
sure you
yeah.
did as well, which he was like,
Yes.
we're gonna give funds to small businesses and entrepreneurs and founders, and I was like, I know what this little bat signal is.
Yes,
out
that's
there.
that's the Bay Area.
Yeah, that's the Bay Area Congresswoman.
Hey,
that
tech
we know and
guys,
love.
you're
Yeah, it's
gonna
like,
get
we
some
got you.
special
You're
love.
gonna vest.
Keep the money
Listen.
flowing in.
Yeah.
Let Reid Hoffman, I
Once
need
a
a few more
California
dollars.
machine politician.
Yeah,
always
exactly. You know where your bread
Machine
is buttered.
Totally.
I'm looking a little bit more. I thought the abortion. I wrote in my notes
Yeah.
about the abortion section that I thought that actually was probably the strongest. One of the things I've been trying to remark on here is that I found it remarkable Democratic embrace of social libertarianism at this
Yes.
convention.
Oh, yeah.
And so for me, I mean, I think that's very, very popular in this country.
Absolutely.
And so for her, when she says he plans to create a national anti-abortion coordinator, the freedom to love who you love, like this very social libertarian language is extremely popular.
Going after the
And
Barstool
going
conservatives.
we're in the Barstool studio. And the
Oh, yeah.
Barstool conservatives, right? And it's like that actually thought out of almost everything she said, that probably might be the most impactful part of her entire speech, just because that is the number one reason why a lot of Democrats came out to vote. I mean, the $500 million that she's raised so far. And I just think the language calibration by Tim Walz and by her, and really all Democrats, they've had a lot of party discipline over this last week. I've frankly been impressed by it. I'm like, these people, they are playing to win. That's what I think I saw.
Yeah.
I'll steal
Yeah.
Ryan's point on this because I think it's the right point. The thing about abortion politics that makes it so powerful is that it's so tangible.
Yeah.
Like, it's very
That's true.
clear. It's a, very clear promise. It's very clear, the direction of the Republican Party and who is responsible for the current state of affairs that's overwhelmingly unpopular. It's very clear that I think it was genuinely jarring and shocking to a lot of people that, like, we had this right and now we don't. Like, holy shit, that means anything's on the table. So I also, she's obviously much more credible on the issue and much more comfortable talking about the issue than Joe Biden ever, even at his best, right? Even 10 years ago, Joe Biden would have been. And I do think, a key piece of this is I saw this. I don't. You guys may have read into this more, but I saw Schumer was floating potentially.
The filibuster we talked about.
Yeah, getting rid of the filibuster, maybe just for Roe versus Wade. So I think it is possible that they actually do deliver and put a focus on that issue. But even if they don't, just not having the Republicans in charge is very motivating to a lot of people on that issue.
It's a very powerful negative case. It's a very powerful tangible thing that you can quite easily do.
He owns Dobbs.
It is.
He owns
it's-
Dobbs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and there's
just
no
one of
way-
those where
there's
he
no way around
cannot
it.
run away from it.
Yeah.
It
And
is.
she read the quote.
Right.
He said, I did it. I'm glad I did it, or I'm proud of it, or whatever the language was, very unequivocal. And it's undeniable, obviously.
Right, and I'm reading again just through my notes. I mean, I didn't think the Jan 6 stuff was all that strong, but you're not wrong. People did vote on that. I thought the abortion section was the strongest. I mean, the foreign policy stuff, if we want to come back, was crazy. I mean, it's like that really was. I mean, I think there's something in there for everybody to hate, especially if you watch this show. The Ukraine and the NATO stuff, which was like very clear that she will escalate the war and will continue what's going on Israel. I mean, it was basically, I think Biden could have given that speech, and maybe she spoke a little bit differently on the Palestinian issue, on Iran.
He said those protesters out there have a point.
Yeah,
That's what he said the other day.
yeah, I apologize. You're right. I mean, on the Iran stuff, I mean, for me, it was it was almost like a Hillary Clinton-esque speech. And I saw one of Tim Miller, who works over at the Bulwark, one of the Never Trump types, and he just said something I think is astute and true. He's like, the border and foreign policy section of the speech could have come from the John McCain convention. And I was like, yeah, I think that's actually, that's.
Wrote a book about Obama, and was arguing that Obama was constrained by the perceptions. Matt and I will stay on for another hour because we're both off tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll be talking to Ryan Grimm tomorrow.
Yes, we will.
Personal level impacts us.
Yes, and another.
Old BS. next election cycle, when there's some other generic Republican running and they try to fearmonger to us about how dangerous the Republican is and you have to choose the lesser of two evils, I am done. I am done. I'm not going to buy it anymore. It's time for Democrats to understand.
Number that says those tariffs, because they're so sky high, are going to cost the average American $4,000 a year. The right framing for any person going into politics, especially if you mean it, it would be amazing if you meant it. But even if you don't, the right way to reach people in America is that we all love opportunity. And so, and I wish some politician would one day do it. And of course I hope it's her, but at least she framed it the right way and she thinks about it the right way. Because what's the number one thing about this country, and there's a lot of great things about it and a lot of things we have to fix, right? The number one thing is we all at least get a shot. If we can give every person in this country, poor, middle class, or rich, a fair chance, an opportunity. We're not looking for equality of results. We're looking for equality of opportunity, right? Yeah. So she emphasized that was great. And that freedom is the ability to control your body. And it would be great if you had a female president signing into law, national. We're in a world of trouble. We had record immigration that was at the border. And Biden had weirdly put Kamala Harris in charge of immigration, actually at least half of immigration, not necessarily the border, et cetera. But those nuances, I think, are unimportant and no one will even remember them, right? But he gave her no power to fix it, right? So it was this albatross around her neck. And, you can say it's definitely fair to criticize the Biden administration on it, and we did, right? I don't know how fair it is to criticize Kamala Harris, but that's not the point. The point is that giant liability has now become an advantage for him. Why? Because Donald Trump played it so poorly. When he killed the border bill that the Republicans themselves had proposed and written. Now, normally what Democrats would do is go, oh, let's ignore that giant mistake that he made and move on with our lives. And let's talk about democracy and generic things. And he's a bad guy and he's a racist, sexist, et cetera, and totally ruin it, right? But in this case, they're not doing that. They're doing the correct thing, which is say, wait a minute. We had a huge immigration problem. Conservatives were livid about the immigration problem, and rightfully so, right? And we had a bill written by conservatives, ready to go, and we're saying, okay, you guys win. Let's do this bill, okay? And Trump says, I don't want to protect the country. I want to protect me,
right?
My career.
I want something to run on. Me.
Exactly. And if they pound away at that, at some point, not only will it definitely work with independence, enough independence that it could make a difference, but even some portion of Republicans have to go, yeah, wait a minute. Why did he kill a bill we like and a bill he would sign if he got into office? Because if we all believe, conservatives say this all the time, and I believe that you believe, if we all believe that these guys pouring over the border is a real threat to our safety and security, right? So Trump is willing to endanger your family and your security for his own personal gain in his political career.
I mean,
and that is who
yes.
Trump is.
Obviously, yes.
Yes.
And think about Senator Langford, a Republican from Oklahoma who worked on that legislation. It was a grab bag of Republican dreams on immigration, really, when you think about it. I mean, it was concession after concession the Democrats engaged in order to agree on that immigration bill. And Trump came in and crushed it. And I remember Langford in the beginning being furious about that. Because It's like, we've been wanting this bill for how long? And we finally have it. But Trump squashes it for his own electoral advantage. And in the end, by the way, I mean, there's a pretty good chance that Trump doesn't get elected. And so Kamala Harris is saying that she would sign that bill. I would say, there's room to negotiate some of those provisions in that bill. But we'll see what happens. And I like the fact that she didn't drop that issue. Because, look, I'm going to be honest. I do think that Democrats dropped the ball on immigration. I do think that Biden should have done more on immigration. And he didn't really pay attention to that issue until it became a real political liability for him. And so they can't let that issue go. Our immigration system is, in fact, broken. there is a loophole that is really difficult to deal with, considering the lack of judges, the lack of personnel we have at the border. We need to fix that issue, and I hope that Democrats do so should she get elected.
Yeah, and then the last thing on Trump is she pointed out last time he had guardrails because he worked with a lot of established politicians and generals, etc. And now this time there'll be no guardrails. And if you thought last time was chaotic, wait till you get a load of this time. And I agree with that. But now let's move to our weakness. So the only part of the speech that was disappointing was the part about Gaza. Now, a lot of people, I guarantee you, will look at that speech and go, oh my God, she handled it perfectly. It was so balanced. She said, we love Israel and our heart breaks for October 7th. But hey, Palestinians are also human beings and we care about them. And wouldn't it be great if they were free and independent, right? She didn't even say independent, but good enough. She believes in a two-state solution. Two-state solution is American foreign, is official American policy, as she stated. Is that enough? No, of course not. Because those are just words.
Yeah.
And we've been doing words all along. She's pretending she cares about Palestinians, but we sent $26 billion after they killed 40,000, like around 36,000, I believe at the time, Palestinians. At that point, they'd already killed 25,000 women and children. That's a stadium full of dead women and children. We sent them $26 billion as a thank you. She made no policy changes or even hinted at any, and she won't have any.
There is nothing left in Gaza. They leveled Gaza. There is nothing for Palestinians to live in, to deal with. I mean, it's just, maybe this is too harsh, but this is what I believe. Kamala Harris will change absolutely nothing in response to Israel's atrocities in Gaza. It'll be a continuation of Biden's policies. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
Nothing will change. Nothing.
Yeah. Are those policies worse than Biden's? No. I mean, the portion of her speech that talked about it wasn't really a policy. It was just words, right?
Literally the same.
It wasn't any worse than Biden's. It wasn't any better than Biden's.
Exactly.
Is it better than Trump's? Yeah, but Trump's a maniac. That's not a good standard, right? So that part was at best mediocre. So that's
awful.
Yeah.
Mediocre is not harsh enough. It was awful. It was a continuation of Biden's disastrous failed policies that are brutalizing and killing tens of thousands of innocent people, likely more at this point. We're going to find out after the rubble is cleared and we see all of those dead bodies, carcasses underneath that rubble. It's disgusting. Okay, so that totally killed the excitement I felt about her speech. I'm just going to keep it honest.
I know, but Anna, you know so much more than the average person, right? The average person is going to see that part of the speech and go, that seems balanced. She cares about Israelis. She cares about Palestinians.
Yeah, that's why
that seems lovely.
That's why I'm here to explain that no, it wasn't lovely and it wasn't balanced. It is a continuation of our government taking our money and funneling it to a far-right government that is committing atrocities against innocent people in Gaza and the West Bank.
Yeah.
Period.
So, last thing I'll say about it is, I'm just not surprised. Of course, she was never going to. And if you were expecting her to have good policy on Gaza, I'm sorry that your heart was broken, but there was no way she was going to do that. I was a little extra disappointed because she spent more time talking about how Israel has suffered than Gaza has suffered.
Israelis are people. They're human beings, right?
Yeah.
In the eyes of our government, Palestinians not human beings.
So 40 times as many Palestinians have been killed. If you were going to be proportionate and balanced, you would have spent 40 times the amount of time on the suffering of the Palestinians and the Israelis. There's nothing wrong with saying the Israelis have suffered. They did, right? But of course, she's not going to spend 40 times more. But at least give us a sense of proportionality. And if you didn't know that immigration problem, and rightfully,
but exactly like the proportion, and I'm hoping that Israelis, they must understand that you know what I'm saying, that like by killing all those people, that's not helping the case. You know, you're not helping the case of peace, because now it's like you're creating more beef in that area there's more people that hate you now. That's why I'm not like, I never like anytime like it's the stuff that's going on right now with Israel Palestine. I think we are. Kamala Harris has to figure out a way to approach it very carefully. But I personally believe the reason why she did not touch it is because of money and the lobbies and APAC. Those are bullies. I mean, not all of them, but like there's some people in that group that do not allow any negotiation. So it's tough for you to express yourself like that normally. And I also think it's because she's below Biden. But I have this weird belief that after the election, she might take more risk. After, if she wins, I think she's just trying to win. I think so, but I think the progressives do not understand that.
Right? And we had a bill written by conservatives, ready to go, and we're saying, okay, you guys win. Let's do